Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. Obtain Kaido fruit, become the #1 swordsman in the Rocks era. Chapter 21. Ordinary blades will inevitably have gaps in the collision, or even be cut off by a sharper knife. Golden Lion Shiki's expression became solemn, and he continued, the black sword uses the armed domineering chain knife to make the knife sharper and tougher. As long as your domineering power is strong enough, your sword will never be broken. Even hundreds of years later, you can still cut iron like clay. This is the black knife. In the final analysis, the power of the black sword depends on the power of the user's armed color and domineering force. Said. Golden Lion Shiki took out the long knife from his waist, and his arm suddenly turned into black metal, reflecting bursts of cold light. The armed domination quickly spread from his arm to the originally sharp blade. It also caused the blade to quickly turn black. Shiki, the golden lion holding a cigar, said proudly, "This is the black knife." Pretendingly, he turned his head and blew out a puff of white smoke. Looking at Aries, his eyes sparkled with gold, and his heart became excited. With armed color haki, my body can become stronger than a sword. As long as my armed aura is strong enough, I can surpass those famous swords. No, it's not just a famous sword, it's a supreme large sword with 12 skills. He looked excited, staring at the golden lion with a pair of eyes as big as car lights, and said anxiously, "Quick! Teach me the domineering power of armed color." The three of them had walked to the skeleton castle without knowing it. Whitebeard smiled and said, "Let's go in first and talk about it first. With your physical fitness, you can learn the armed domineering very quickly." Just entered the skeleton castle. Whitebeard and Golden Lion quarreled again, both asking to go to their rooms. Whitebeard said angrily, "Yellow-haired lion, your room is in such a state of ruin, and you still use it to entertain Aries." The Golden Lion replied, "My room is broken, wouldn't it be better to go to my subordinate's room? Aries is learning armed domineering from me, why are you joining in the fun with a white beard?" You can teach Aries domineering, but I can't teach him. Whitebeard, do you know how to temper a black knife? The two couldn't argue. Face to face again, if the golden lion hadn't been holding a cigar in its mouth, the white-bearded face might have hit the golden lion's face. "Okay, let's go to my room." Aries stopped the living enemies, and put forward his own suggestions. Whitebeard and Golden Lion both looked at Aries at the same time, their faces separated, and they stood next to Aries, one on the left and the other on the right. All agreed to the proposal. After solving this problem, the three of them went to Aries's room arm in arm. The other pirates who saw this scene had dull faces. There was only the simplest furniture in the room, and Whitebeard and Golden Lion didn't care. Anyway, their goal was Aries. The Golden Lion glared at Whitebeard fiercely and said to Aries, "This armed and domineering aura is the aura in the body. To practice armed domineering, you must have perfect control over your body. The power and potential of the human body can be unleashed." His eyes were full of intense expectation. How far can a monster like Aries achieve its armed domination in the future? He said again with some excitement, "Aries, put your hand on my arm and feel how my golden lion uses the armed color domineering force." Hear the words. Aries also excitedly put his big hand on the golden lion's arm and said, "Okay, let me see the armed domineering force." The next second, buzz. With a trembling sound, the golden lion's arm instantly became armored and hardened, like polished black metal. "It's amazing." Aries couldn't help shouting excitedly, his big copper bell eyes sparkling, and he exclaimed, "This is the armed color, it can actually make the body harder than metal. So hard. This is what I want." His heart suddenly started beating violently, and he saw the hope that his body could surpass the 12 skills of the unparalleled sharp sword. With armed color haki, your body will definitely be stronger than those famous swords. Seeing the excited Aries, the golden lion raised his lips and said proudly, "How about it, is it hard enough?" He suddenly recalled the happy time last night and Miss Ba Jin's high-pitched and loud, singing voice, last night. Armed color haki is really tough and powerful, and really easy to use. The golden lion quickly calmed down the spring in his mind and continued, "Normal attacks cannot break through my armed and domineering defense. Aries, armed haki is a skill that must be cultivated on the road to becoming a strong person. He can stimulate your power exponentially. The white beard on the side also grinned and said, "Kula lala. Shiki is right, if you want to become the top strong man in this sea, you must have powerful armed haki." Their loud words fell in Aries' ears, causing the blood in his body to boil involuntarily. In his mind, he also recalled the strange feeling when he touched the golden lion's arm just now. The human body can continuously become stronger through exercise. The repeated blows and impacts made Aries' skin, muscles, and bones become harder and more resistant to beating, but compared with the domineering changes in the golden lion's armed color. Make a decision. Aries is convinced that armed domineering is the hardness he has been pursuing. And it is a powerful ability that can make his body stronger than the 12 skills of the supreme large sword. He began to recall the scene of Golden Lion Shiki using armament haki, and the scene played in his mind like slow motion. Normally, a person's memory will only be remembered unless it has a deep impression, and most of it will be forgotten. Unless you train repeatedly and deliberately strengthen your memory, it will be forgotten and disappear. That's why they say, a good memory is worse than a bad pen. But Aries is different, it seems, as long as he is willing. Everything that happened can be replayed in his mind, and can be sped up or slowed down according to his thoughts and will. It all started one day a few years ago. From that day on, his soul and brain seemed to have become extremely special. Now, Aries replayed the feeling and image of the golden lion using armament haki over and over again in his mind. Fall into deep thoughts and memories. The golden lion looked at Aries in surprise and said to himself, "This guy seems to be thinking about how to use armed color haki, but armed color haki cannot be learned in a day or two." Then he chuckled. "It took me more than a month to skillfully use armament haki." "More than a month, so I'm much faster than you." "It only took me more than 20 days. Whitebeard raised his chin proudly, blowing the beard on his mouth with the sound he made. "Quite interesting." The golden lion looked at Whitebeard with a rather unhappy expression, and responded with an arrogant expression, "That's because you are strong in physical skills, and I, the golden lion. It's the double sword style, the great swordsman." Right now, a voice broke the argument between the two. It's armed color haki, right?" The air suddenly became quiet. The golden lion and the white beard turned their heads to look at Aries' arm, and their eyes widened in exaggeration. Nani. The golden lion's face was full of shock, and he exclaimed with his mouth wide open, "Is this how you use your armed domineering energy?" At once, with his mouth wide open, the cigar fell on the tatami. He also hurriedly reached out to pick up the cigar, opened his mouth and blew out the ashes. And Whitebeard also reached out and raised Aries's big, black, thick and strong arm in front of him. This big arm was as thick and strong as an elephant's leg. Really armed and domineering and hardened. Whitebeard felt as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes moved from his arms to Aries's face, seeing his unwavering expression. The corner of his mouth twitched unnaturally, and he felt sour in his heart. "You are so pretentious, now you can learn to use armed domineering." He reached out and patted Aries on the shoulder, and said with great emotion, "Aries, although you were a little dull, you were really a one-of-a-kind genius. If this guy hadn't been assigned to Akoku's staff by Captain Rocks, otherwise he would have taken Aries into his own team even if he lost his face. Pity. Whitebeard really regrets it now." Golden Lion Shiki took a deep breath from his cigar, calming down his heart that was deeply shocked by Aries, and exclaimed, "Learning armed color haki is like drinking water. I have never seen anyone with such a strong learning ability. You are definitely more of a monster than Linlin. The most indispensable thing in the Rocks Pirates is monsters, and even they themselves are all monsters. But there is also a gap between monsters and monsters." This is also the first time he has seen Aries, a monster among monsters. The pervert among perverts. Aries suddenly frowned and said, "This armed look is domineering. Strangeness. Why do I feel like my body is resisting?" Aries' muttering to himself made both Golden Lion and Whitebeard confused. This guy's spirit seems to be a little different from ordinary people. The Golden Lion looked at Aries with strange eyes. Whitebeard's expression also changed, and he said, "Indeed, he seems to have always been different from others. Do you remember when Aries challenged the captain? This guy is extraordinarily persistent." Golden Lion reached out and took out the cigar from his mouth, and blew out a puff of smoke. The old man said that Aries was not normal a few years ago. I don't know what the reason is, maybe it's a good thing. He believes that in this world, being strong is enough. The two were talking, and some fragments of memories seemed to flash through Aries's mind, which were from the drunk state that had just occurred. The blurry and messy fragments made his brain confused again. Follow your body's instincts. Just use reverse armed color haki. The dark arm instantly became red and hot, and wisps of white smoke came out. The white beard holding Aries' arm suddenly felt a burning pain coming from his hand, and the nerves in his body subconsciously let go. He shook his hand hastily. Whitebeard opened his mouth and shouted in surprise. This is the same state Aries was in when he was drunk. And Aries' arm fell with a bang, smashing the small table on the tatami in front of him. Seeing this scene, the pockets in the corners of Golden Lion's eyes started to hurt again, and he asked with surprise, Aries, is this state your own special fighting skill? Following the Rocks Pirates, Golden Lion has seen many guys of strange races. There are even many on board the Rocks Pirates, such as the Fur Tribe who can activate the power of lightning and transform into a moon lion on a full moon night. And the Fishmen race, a race that can control seawater as weapons and bullets. Whitebeard also stared at Aries with eyes full of questions, and said, yes, when you were drunk before, your strength improved a lot in this state. I've never seen this kind of power before. Very strong. The two captains of the 2nd Division of the Rocks Pirates, Whitebeard, call them very strong, so naturally they are not ordinary strong. This is the power of armed domineering. Aries looked at his red and hot arms, his face full of strong surprise. This armed haki has fiery properties and is even harder. It is more powerful than the increase brought by armed color hardening. Aries's eyes sparkled and he said excitedly, I like this feeling. This feeling is like putting an iron block into a furnace and continuously quenching and melting it to extract the impurities. Memories from his childhood also surfaced in his mind. Aries's father is a very famous knife forging master, and he once forged a famous sword of the 21st level of the Great Knife. Under the influence of what I heard and saw, I was naturally very impressed by some things about the forging of knives. In the process of forging a knife, there is naturally a step of melting the iron. And his usual, self-abuse, behavior is also part of the process of forging a knife. The Golden Lion raised his eyebrows, quite surprised. You said this is armed domineering. I don't believe it. I have never seen such armed domination. Looking at Aries' arm that was red, hot, and even emitting white smoke, his heart trembled. Could this be armed domineering? This devil fruit has about the same power. Whitebeard also thought of this, and immediately asked with some excitement, Aries, have you ever eaten a strange-looking fruit before? The color is very different from ordinary fruits, and there are spiral patterns on it. The taste is very unpleasant, it makes people want to vomit after eating the fruit. Remember carefully, have you ever eaten such fruit? Thinking of the smell of devil fruit, Whitebeard's face suddenly turned the color of green grassland. His eyes stared at Aries nervously, because Aries' brain might not really know that he had eaten a devil fruit. You don't even know that you have extremely special devil fruit abilities. Maybe it was yesterday or today that I accidentally ate a devil fruit. After all, Aries had trained in the sea before, so that might have been what happened in the past 2 days. Aries' face became blank, and he frowned and tried hard to recall the past. The more he recalled the past, the memory fragments in his mind were constantly intertwined, making his brain begin to hurt. He reached out and hugged his head, and inserted his fingers into his hair, causing clusters of black hair to fall down. That's pain from the brain's nerves. It was inhuman torture and pain that came from tearing apart the soul. Even Aries' extremely thick nerves and ability to resist pain couldn't help but howl. The Golden Lion looked anxious and worried and shouted at Aries, Hey! Aries, what's wrong with you? The Golden Lion stood up and rushed to Aries, forcefully opened his hand and shouted, Aries, wake up! How could this kid do this? Whitebeard also shook Aries' huge body vigorously, and made a deafening sound in Aries' ears, Aries, what's wrong with you kid? And Aries' reverse armament haki also began to change positions. Sometimes it appears on the feet, sometimes on the chest, sometimes on the back, or even on the buttocks. The Whitebeard and the Golden Lion had to use their armed domineering force to resist in order to avoid being burned. Whitebeard said to the Golden Lion anxiously, I'm here to see Aries. You go find Captain John to see Aries. What's going on with this kid? Just when the golden lion was about to fly out, Aries's voice sounded, I'm fine. He breathed a heavy sigh of relief and said, my head just gets confused sometimes, and it'll be fine after a while. Aries, your hair. The golden lion looked at the hair that fell off on Aries' head in shock. In the blink of an eye, this guy's head turned into a smooth braised egg. It is extremely silky, like polished jade, reflecting a burst of light. Aries immediately reached out and touched his head. It was like an oversized, smooth marble, and he didn't feel any pricking hair or hair at all. I'm bald, he murmured to himself, then his face lit up and he said happily, that's good, now you can exercise your head. Aries also suddenly remembered that his brain seemed to have very little training. Now that I have no hair, it is easier to exercise my brain. Gulu. Whitebeard swallowed hard, a little frightened by Aries' words, and immediately dissuaded him, Aries, you can't mess around. The head is an extremely important part of the human body. If something goes wrong with the training, we'll be in trouble. His eyelids couldn't help but twitch violently. Aries's bald head was extremely eye-catching, and the boy seemed to be planning to exercise his head as well. It really surprised him. The golden lion couldn't help but curiously reached out and touched Aries' head, which was as smooth as jade. The silky touch couldn't help but make him touch it a few more times. It feels really good. He didn't forget about business, and warned, Aries, it's probably your strange armed domination that caused all your hair to fall out. If you ask me, it's better not to practice your armed color haki. Just practice the kind of armed color haki I taught you before. The golden lion was a little confused as to why the good armed domineering power turned into such a weird ability when it came into Aries's hands. Not only is it very different from the normal armed color domineering, but it can also make people lose all their hair. Golden Lion couldn't help but think in his mind, if he didn't have this handsome and majestic golden hair, what would his title become from Golden Lion? He couldn't help but shudder, thinking about it was too much for him to accept. No, Aries rejected the Golden Lion's proposal and said firmly, I like this kind of armed domineering, it is unique. I must train my armed color haki to the strongest level. Then he stood up and said, I'm going to practice. Ignoring the white beard and the Golden Lion, he walked out of the house with his thick and muscular legs. This boy Aries is such a training madman. The Golden Lion took a strong puff of the cigar in his mouth and couldn't help but admire. This guy can swim in the sea for several days, so he is a ruthless person. There was a look of curiosity and expectation on Whitebeard's face, and he raised the corner of his mouth. Let's go and see how this kid trained in the past. Okay, I also want to see how this kid turned into the monster he is now. The Golden Lion also had this intention, and he readily agreed to Whitebeard's proposal. The two hit it off immediately and followed Aries in perfect harmony. And on Beehive Island, a fierce battle was taking place in an extremely huge room in this skull castle. Bang, bang, bang. A series of dull sounds resounded through the room like muffled thunder, and the whole house seemed to be falling apart. No, like an earthquake, the tables and cabinets in the room were shaking and making a crisp sound. Even the objects placed above began to beat rhythmically with the sound of impact and vibration. Charlotte Linlin's movements can be described as wild and violent. Then with a smile on his face, he said to Kaido, Kaido, that's not enough. Kaido, do you want to have great power? If you want, use all your strength. Their bodies are so hard that they can't be hurt by a sword, and their streamlined muscle lines are full of beauty. The battle between Charlotte Linlin and Kaido is like two pieces of steel constantly colliding, making a sound like the clash of gold and iron in fencing. Kang. Kaido gritted his teeth and tried to persevere, because he knew that once it was suspended, Linlin would definitely go berserk. Linlin, when will you give me that devil fruit you mentioned? I want great power. I want to defeat that guy Aries. Prove that I am the strongest on the ship, the newbie. There was obviously a strong suppressed anger in Kaido's voice. It was this anger that made his attention begin to shift and he became even more tenacious. There is a huge difference in strength between the two, but it is the transfer of will that allows Kaido to stand firm despite being exploited and squeezed by Linlin's monster-like body. Linlin laughed happily, with a spring in his eyes, and said to Kaido, it's not enough. I will let Longbread teach you how to use armed color haki, and I will also let him teach you how to make armed color haki stronger. Having said this, she was so excited that she couldn't help but stick out her scarlet tongue and mouth out the words she was looking forward to. Use armed domineering to make your body harder. Hearing Linlin's words, Kaido couldn't help but curse Chunin. This woman still refuses to give me that devil fruit. No, I must get the devil fruit. Only devil fruit can make me stronger. Defeat that boy Aries. After a while, there was a boom. The originally hard stone bed suddenly shattered under the huge force. The hard floor in the room also had cracks appearing on it, and finally it shattered like potato chips after being squeezed. Although Linlin was a little unhappy, he looked very interested and said with great interest, "Next time, ask someone to make a bed out of steel." Hearing Linlin's words, Kaido suddenly twitched the corner of his mouth, but secretly vowed in his heart to get the devil fruit in Linlin's hand as soon as possible. Get away from this monster as soon as possible. Linlin's monster-like body was a disaster for him. The final result of this war was Linlin's victory. Feeling that the strength of Kaido's body was gradually decreasing and showing signs of decline, Linlin looked unhappy and said, "Kaido, hurry up and learn armament haki, and hurry up and become stronger. Your body is so different from that boy Aries. Although the body is large, it is not useful." As he spoke, he stood up directly from Kaido, with a clear warning in his huge eyes. "If you can't do it, I won't give you the devil fruit. I'm waiting for the day when you become strong." Kaido stretched out his hand to push away the gravel, and stood up from the ground with a gloomy expression. Linlin's words directly stabbed his inner self-esteem. As a man, at this time, he was mentioned that he was inferior to others, and a strong anger suddenly surged in his heart. "Wait, I will definitely surpass that guy." Kaido gritted his teeth and said, not even willing to mention Aries' name. He stepped out with one foot and crushed the gravel on the ground into powder. After putting on his clothes, he immediately left the room. In the skeleton castle, Captain John walked into Rock's room carrying a bottle of wine. He looked at Rock sitting on the sofa with Damascus and said as he walked towards the sofa, "It was that boy Aries who made the noise before." He sat down on the sofa, held up the bottle of wine and poured it into his mouth. Tons, tons, tons. Ha! A large gulp of wine went down his throat, causing Captain John's face to show a happy expression, and he continued, "That guy Shiki taught Aries how to drink, but he accidentally made Aries drunk. It caused that boy Aries to act carelessly." Then he raised the corner of his mouth with a smile, "Ha ha." Even Shiki's face was punched out by Aries. Rox also had a look of surprise on his face, and reached out to smooth the hair on his head that was swaying in the wind like bundles of seaweed. The corners of his mouth curved slightly and he said, "It's a bit interesting. That kid is not mentally healthy, aren't you going to show him?" Captain John put the wine bottle on the table with a bang, looked directly at Rox opposite, and widened the corners of his mouth. "Why do you want to treat Aries? Isn't it good that he is like this? For a man with perseverance and dreams, this sea cannot stop him. That guy wants to make himself a famous sword. Doesn't the captain want to see if this guy can succeed? Although he is a navigator and part-time doctor of the Wald Pirates, he has no intention of treating Aries. Instead, he was thinking about how to make Aries go further on this impossible road." Ha ha ha. Hearing John's words, Rox couldn't help laughing. "That's right, I also want to see the guy who has the courage to challenge me. Rox. How far can it grow in the future?" He leaned back and leaned on the back of the sofa with his hands, his face full of arrogance and confidence. "As long as you are on my Rox boat, I, Rox, have the confidence to be the strongest. Whether it's Newgate, Shiki or Linlin, my boat is big enough to accommodate their dreams. The final destination for the Wald Pirates will be this world. There are many pirates with ambitions and dreams on this ship, and Rox knows this very well, but he has absolute confidence that he can control these guys. Let them become their own powerful heroes on the road to pursuing their dreams and ambitions." Captain John reached out and took out a bottle of wine, threw it directly towards Rox, and said, "That kid Aries is really a monster. I don't know what method he used to increase his body temperature and increase his combat effectiveness. A huge improvement." Then he told Rox everything that had happened before. Only a quarter of the bottle of wine was left. Rox put down the bottle, His domineering eyes turned slightly in his eye sockets, and said, maybe it's some kind of special instinct. It will take some time for this guy to grow up. As he spoke, his expression began to become solemn and serious. Let's talk about business. We have many enemies in this sea now. There are the Wald Pirates, the Roger Pirates, etc., and there are even a few powerful pirates, such as the aloof Red Redfield. But our real enemy is Marine and the world government. There are many pirates, and everyone has their own ambitions and dreams. Compared to pirates, Rox cares more about the world government and its marine organization that have stood in this world for more than 700 years. That is the biggest obstacle to his domination of the world. John's face also became solemn and serious, and after pondering for a moment, he said, in the past 2 years, the Rox Pirates must develop rapidly, and at the same time, they must also search for powerful devil fruits. 2 years from now it will be time for the world government to hold the World Conference. That is the best time. Otherwise, if you miss it, you will have to wait another 4 years. It is now the year 1480 of the Haiyuan calendar, and there are only 2 years until the next meeting. Rox nodded and drank the remaining wine in the bottle. A gleam flashed in his eyes and his tone became more serious. Then it will be completed within these 2 years. We must also find a powerful devil fruit. Putting the bottle down, he looked at John and said, John, you are my most trustworthy person. You have also read the Devil Fruit Illustrated Manual. So for our respective dreams, we must find powerful devil fruits. I'll leave this to you, be careful and don't get discovered by Marine. John stood up from the sofa and said with a smile, leave this matter to me, I will definitely find a devil fruit that satisfies the captain. The two people's eyes met in the air, and when they looked at each other, they could see the ambition in each other's eyes. The scene changes. In the training room on Beehive Island. Pirates are a group of energetic guys, and some pirates choose to vent their excess energy with wine and women. Some pirates chose to exercise to vent their anger. The reason why some of them choose to exercise is not because they don't want wine and women, but because they have no money. This is reality. Their strength will also determine their status in the Rox Pirates and the treasure they harvest. The sound of hey kept ringing in the training room, but it was overshadowed by a loud bang 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 sound. That's the sound Aries makes when training. A roaring sound like wind and thunder came from the iron rod, and finally landed heavily on Aries' strong muscles. Bang! The bronzed muscles trembled. The golden lion looked at Aries, who was training vigorously in front of him, and raised the corner of his mouth with interest. Gia ha ha ha. Newgate, I have an idea. If you say I teach Aries swordsmanship. With this kid's persistence and hard work, how far can he practice swordsmanship? Teach this kid swordsmanship. A flash of light flashed in Whitebeard's eyes, staring at Aries who was training like self-mutilation. He whispered to the Golden Lion, I think this guy's strength is about to catch up with the Marine Elite Lieutenant General. With this guy's physique and vitality, he can at least hold on for more than half an hour in the hands of the Marine Elite Lieutenant General. There is absolutely no problem. Quote, if Aries learns swordsmanship, even that powerful brute force will not be something ordinary people can withstand. I can teach Aries swordsmanship. Whitebeard gave his evaluation. Aries' current advantages and disadvantages are very obvious. He is physically powerful but his moves are too simple and primitive. In front of the Grandmaster's armed and domineering powerhouse, his body would never be able to withstand multiple attacks. On the other hand, if a non-armed domineering Grandmaster wants to kill Aries, he may not even be able to break through the defense. Gia ha ha ha. Newgate, he is very strong now, isn't he? The Golden Lion looked up at Newgate, who was taller than him, and reminded, don't forget that this kid is just a genius. 14 or 15 years old, I can't see this guy's future. Because maybe Aries will create a miracle, and I, the Golden Lion, will personally create this legend. With the corners of his mouth raised high, the Golden Lion in his 30s, the age when men are at their peak, asked the Whitebeard flamboyantly, isn't this a very interesting and exciting thing? If one day, Aries becomes the world's best swordsman, and I, the Golden Lion, will also be the master of the world's best swordsman. With Aries' potential, coupled with his persistence and seriousness in training, such a thing is not impossible in his opinion. The Golden Lion's heart surged, and the dull thumping sound of Aries hitting his body was like the sound of his heart beating, making his blood excited. The white beard on the side suddenly frowned and said to the golden lion reluctantly, "You want to be that kid's teacher and then add him to your squad, right? This is not okay. I also want to be Aries' teacher and teach him physical skills." A strong sense of vigilance arose in his heart. If the golden lion and Aries got together, wouldn't Aries become the golden lion in the future? Never allow this to happen. What I can't get, that guy with the golden lion can't even imagine. Ha! Hearing the words from Whitebeard's mouth, the golden lion looked confused. After a moment, a blazing flame burned in his eyes, staring at Whitebeard with wide eyes. Biting the cigar in his mouth, he said word by word, "You want to rob Aries from me? If I teach him swordsmanship, he won't learn physical skills. He is a man born for the sword." Whitebeard's eyes were also wide open, not to be outdone at all. He raised his head slightly and said with an arrogant and fearless look, "What? Do you have an opinion? You can teach Aries swordsmanship, but I can't teach him physical skills." The upper bodies of the two people were pulling each other closer like magnets, and their tilted bodies made them eye to eye again. The other person's face is close at hand. Many pirates in training around him also looked over. They had seen this kind of thing countless times. On the Rocks Pirates ship, Whitebeard and Golden Lion have completely opposite ideas and styles of doing things, but they both have their own dreams and the same hobbies, wine and banquets. Of course, this is also the hobby of 99.9% of pirates. At this time, Akoku came over and put one hand on the Golden Lion's chest and the other on the Whitebeard's chest. Pushing the two of them away, he gave a very reasonable and compromised suggestion. "Since you all want to teach Aries, I think it would be better for one of you to teach him for a day. This will save you from fighting anymore." Although he considers himself to be a master of swordsmanship, he is still a little inferior to the Golden Lion. Akoku doesn't want to fight for Aries, he has no other ambitions or ideas. As for the goals of Golden Lion and Whitebeard, one is probably to prepare for having a strong companion in the future, and the other is probably to make Aries his family. But none of this has anything to do with him. Whitebeard and Golden Lion were silent. Akoku smiled. "Just do as I say. This will prevent you from fighting. If the captain doesn't agree, you will have no choice." Both Golden Lion and Whitebeard compromised, and Whitebeard even took the initiative to give in. "Today Aries is yours, but don't disturb me to teach Aries how to practice tomorrow." After speaking, he turned around and left without waiting for the Golden Lion to agree. It was like he had taken a small advantage, and the Golden Lion had lost half a day. This made Whitebeard feel a little proud, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He left the training room in a happy mood. The angry Golden Lion gnashed his teeth but had no choice but to snort coldly. "Just half a day, it will be a long time in the future." Then he looked up at Aries, who was training alone in the distance with no one around, and shouted, "Hey, Aries! I'll take you somewhere and follow me to practice swordsmanship." The surrounding pirates all cast envious glances. It was the dream of many Rocks pirates to be personally promoted and taught by a boss. Not everyone can hold the Golden Lion's thick thighs. Most people don't take the Golden Lion seriously at all. No one dared to come forward to provoke this guy, because this guy Shiki the Golden Lion was ruthless, but he could even kill his own men and crew members. Apart from Rocks, the Rocks pirates should not offend the Golden Lion and Charlotte Linlin. This is a privately accepted rule on board. Aries stopped what he was doing. Under the force of the iron rod, patches of redness and blood spread all over his muscles, looking very scary. He turned to look at the Golden Lion and said something that shocked all the pirates in the training room, "I'm not interested in swordsmanship. I just want to temper my body and make myself surpass the unparalleled sharp sword." All the pirates' eyes widened and their jaws dropped to the ground. Rejected. He refused. Golden Lion Shiki. This thing they dreamed of was directly rejected by Aries in public. Isn't this guy afraid of the Golden Lion getting angry? Once this guy gets serious, only a few people like Whitebeard and Rocks can stop him. When the Golden Lion heard Aries' words, his face darkened, and 3 black lines appeared on his forehead. "I once wondered if I had auditory hallucinations in my ears. That boy Aries actually rejected me. Who are you?" "That's the Golden Lion of the Rocks Pirates, Shiki. That is the world-famous double sword style, the great swordsman." The Golden Lion couldn't help but take a deep breath and shouted, "You kid, you have to learn from me even if you don't want to learn." What I, the Golden Lion, say, I mean what I say. 30,000 miles, and one sword radiates cold across 19 continents. The Golden Lion rose from the ground, flying 1 or 2 meters in the air. Whoosh, almost as fast as a bullet and as fast as the wind, he appeared in front of Aries. The Golden Lion had a mixture of love and hate on his face, and said to Aries, Aries, do you know that my Golden Lion's swordsmanship is the best in this sea? So many people want to learn my swordsmanship, but they don't have the qualifications. A waste is a waste after all. Even if you try your best to teach a waste of swordsmanship, you still can't become a great swordsman. The tone of his voice began to get thicker unconsciously. Even he was extremely surprised and couldn't understand that Aries rejected him. The domineering and unruly face of the Golden Lion was filled with the disdain of others, and he continued, you are the only person I, the Golden Lion, value when I join the Rocks Pirates. I believe you can reach the top of this world. His eyes became eager and soft, and he said excitedly, learn swordsmanship from me. Become a powerful pirate that scares everyone. Use strong strength to conquer this sea. Gia ha ha ha. Finally, he let out an arrogant and confident laugh, and an amazing momentum burst out from his body, setting off a fierce wind that swept in all directions. The hair that was as long as the ground and looked like a lion's mane was fluttering crazily. The powerful and intimidating aura shocked the hearts of all the pirates in the training room. This is it, Golden Lion, Shiki. Aries, in front of the Golden Lion, still had a calm face. He was not shaken by the big cake drawn by the Golden Lion at all, and insisted on his belief. He refused. I don't want to practice swordsmanship, I just want to make myself a famous sword that surpasses the unparalleled sword. Swordsmanship will only distract me and waste my time. Hear Aries' words. A look of anger suddenly appeared on the Golden Lion's face. He stared at Aries with sharp eyes and said, Aries, do you know that practicing swordsmanship with me is something that many people aspire to do? Do you know how powerful swordsmanship is? When he said this, most of the anger on his face disappeared, with a hint of doubt, does this boy Aries not know how powerful swordsmanship is? Thinking of this, the Golden Lion immediately said, Aries, come with me, let me, the Golden Lion, show you what swordsmanship at the level of a great swordsman is. Let you see that I, the Golden Lion, can become the captain of the Rocks Pirates because of my strong strength. Aries nodded and said in a very calm tone, no matter how strong your sword skills are, they are not as effective as your own physical improvement. Then he followed the Golden Lion and left the training room with the envious eyes of his fellow pirates. Akoku walked quickly to Aries and hugged Aries' shoulders. He didn't mind Aries' sweat stains at all. Anyway, he went back to wipe the shiny armor with a rag. Simple and hassle-free. Fortunately, Akoku is not small, otherwise he would not be able to hold Aries' shoulders. He smiled and said in Aries' ear, Aries, the Golden Lion's swordsmanship is very strong. Even I can't compare to him. There is only one person in this sea who can compete with him in swordsmanship, the aloof Red Baloric Redfield. Aloof Red, Leadfield. Aries has never heard of this person and has no idea of his strength, but he knows that his spirit can sometimes be chaotic. But I also know that someone who can rival Golden Lion Shiki must be very powerful. Akoku chuckled, stroking his beard with the other hand, and said, I can't finish the story about that guy all day and night. He is a lone ranger and has never lost to anyone in swordsmanship. There was a look of longing on his face, and he said with some regret, it's a pity. I couldn't meet that guy, otherwise I really wanted to see his swordsmanship. Aloof Red, Baloric Redfield. Aries remembered this name in his heart. If such a powerful person fought with him, he would definitely be able to temper himself. If you meet, definitely not to be missed. The group of 3 people gradually moved away from the town and headed towards the extremely remote valley area. On the way, Akoku also patiently told Aries about interesting things about the sea, and Aries also listened with interest. After all, he still knows very little about this world. Alright, that's it. The leading Golden Lion stopped, turned and looked at Aries, with strong confidence on his unruly face, and said to Aries, Aries, take a good look at my swordsmanship. It will definitely surprise you. As he said this, he suddenly pulled out the large knife from his waist, the 21-piece Deadwood. And Aries' tiger eyes were also staring at the Golden Lion, and he saw the golden lion waving the knife in his hand seemingly casually. A swish sound. A bright golden slash flew out from the blade, instantly cutting off the head of a small mountain. It's as easy as cutting a cucumber in half with a kitchen knife. And this is a mountain several times bigger than a giant. Fast and strong. Seeing this scene, Aries couldn't help but widen his eyes and exclaimed, "What is that?" That dazzling and powerful golden slash refreshed his knowledge. For Aries, who had never seen a slash before, his heart was severely shocked. Boom! The cut mountaintop fell fiercely from the air onto the mountain, making a deafening sound and filling the sky with smoke and dust. Aries also felt the ground beneath his feet shaking violently. "How's it going? This is the swordsmanship of my golden lion." The golden lion showed off with a proud look on his face, and even used the famous sword in his hand to show off his skills. The sharp and bright blade reflected bursts of cold light under the sunlight, which was a bit dazzling. Akoku also reached out and patted Aries on the shoulder with a smile on his face. "Now you have seen the power of swordsmanship." Just with swordsmanship, Shiki is a well-deserved strongman in this sea. Only by seeing the vastness of this sea and the power of the world's strong men. Only then will you realize how insignificant you really are. Most people will be desperate and fearful because the enemy is too powerful, while a small number of people will choose to work hard to surpass those strong ones. People's choices determine their own destiny. The hard work and persistence he makes will determine how far he will go on this path, so that he will surpass the set goal. Reach a new height and climb to the top based on the achievements of our predecessors. And Aries is undoubtedly that small group of people, otherwise they would not have gone through years of brutal training and still persisted. His eyes were shining with golden light, and he said with some excitement, "This kind of swordsmanship is so powerful. I also need to learn this attack method." I don't know why, but at this time, a sentence could not help but pop up in his mind. The sword energy stretches across 30,000 miles, and the light of one sword chills 19 continents. Aries's heart beat violently, and a strong yearning and desire suddenly arose in his heart. Suddenly, there was only one thought in his mind, that he should practice swordsmanship. He will definitely become the strongest swordsman in this sea. That is a kind of innate strong self-confidence. Aries's voice was so excited that it became hoarse. "Golden Lion, I want to learn swordsmanship. That sword is really handsome and cool. The power is beyond imagination." Aries is fascinated by it. At this moment, the scene of the golden lion's slash was constantly replaying in his mind, frame by frame playing in his mind. From the moment the golden lion holds the sword, until the golden slash cuts off the mountain top. Over and over again, from the angle and speed of the knife, to the force movement of the arm, etc., it was deeply absorbed by Aries' brain bit by bit. After slow playback, Aries also understood the power of the golden lion Shiki and the power of this slash. Just a casual blow, not only contains various skills, but also contains powerful and swift power. Seeing Aries' impatient and interested expression, the golden lion couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Gia ha ha ha. Now you know how powerful swordsmanship is. Aries, you will feel lucky in the future for your actions today. It will be a blessing in your life to have me, a great swordsman of the double sword style, personally guide you in practicing swordsmanship." Akoku patted his shoulder, his eyes full of high hopes, and said earnestly, "Learn from Shiki, if you can learn all his sword skills. Your name, Aries, will be sung throughout this sea." Then he looked at the golden lion Shiki and said with a smile, "Hey, Aries will be left to you for the time being. I will go back first." The golden lion wanted to teach Aries swordsmanship, but he wisely chose to leave. But just as he turned around, a blue light stimulated his eyes. There was a sneer in my ears. A gust of wind hit him, and he couldn't help but turn his head and look around, exclaiming in shock, "Fly, cut, cut." I saw a blue slash several meters in size flying out. It hit a big tree with a bang, making a sound like an explosion and knocking the tree down. What? The golden lion's eyes also widened, and his voice was long and full of surprise. "This kid has learned how to slash." At this moment, the golden lion was deeply shocked. It only took a few minutes for Aries to use his own arm to execute the flying slash. The two were stunned on the spot. "Gulu." Akoku swallowed his saliva and asked the golden lion with a somewhat unnatural expression, "Shiki, how long did it take you to learn to fly and slash?" His question made the golden lion fall into reminiscing. After all, it was a long time ago, but understanding the flying slash still left a very deep impression on him. He immediately answered Akoku's question. It took about 2 or 3 years. Then the golden lion also asked Akoku, how long did you use it? 4 years. Akoku replied solemnly. My heart was filled with deep shock. It took me 4 years to learn how to fly and slash from a swordsman, but Aries only took a few minutes, which simply refreshed their knowledge. At this moment, Aries frowned slightly and said with some dissatisfaction, no, it's too different from the slash you just swung. Is it because my body can't compete with the famous sword? The golden lion's slash was enough to flatten a mountain peak, and the cut surface was smooth and flat, like a mirror. And his own slashes were very violent and brutal, just like cannonballs. They didn't cut, but exploded. Then Aries watched and replayed the grace of the golden lion's sword in his mind, and at the same time he began to make gestures with his arms. He used his thick and strong arm as a sword, and when he swung it, he brought up bursts of strong air currents that formed into strong winds and spread out, accompanied by a whirring sound. It was like the sound of a huge iron rod being swung rapidly. Along with the bending and rising of Aries's arm, dazzling blue sword lights flew out from the arm and landed on the ground in the distance with a rumbling sound. It also made the golden lion and Akoku get out of the way. Akoku couldn't help but exclaimed, Shiki, do you see that this guy's slashing attack looks like the 6 styles used by the Marines? Hearing what he said, golden lion Shiki nodded in approval, but Aries's slash is not the Arashi Kaku in the 6 styles, his slash is not sharp enough. As a result, this guy's slashing power was not concentrated enough, so a bomb-like explosion occurred. Then he exclaimed with some emotion, but this is already amazing. Aries has just been exposed to slashing. What an enviable talent. This talent is terrible. I still underestimated Aries, and his swordsmanship will be destined to be a road full of thorns. Akoku stared at Aries closely. His expression also changed. The slashes had begun to become more powerful. After Aries' many attempts and changes, the power of the slashes was rapidly becoming stronger. A turbulent wave arose in his heart, and he exclaimed, if this guy continues to grow, his body will turn into an extremely terrifying weapon. The golden lion on the side was overjoyed, his eyes were shining, and he laughed loudly, Gia ha ha ha. I told you that he is a man born for the sword. The swordsmanship in Aries's hands will surely shine with a light that shakes the world. His domineering eyes were filled with strong expectations and a touch of pride of achievement. A new star of swordsmanship was rising in front of him, which would surely illuminate the entire sea in the future. Akoku nodded in approval, stroking his beard to calm the shock in his heart, and commented, Aries's talent is astonishing. His joining the Rocks Pirates may be the guide of destiny. The Rocks Pirates will be the most suitable soil for his growth. He turned to look at the golden lion, and said with some envy, if I had known that Aries's swordsmanship was so talented, I should have been 1 step ahead of his swordsmanship. I'm leaving first, so I won't bother you to teach him swordsmanship. Wait until Akoku is gone. The golden lion stepped in front of Aries. Due to his height, he had to raise his head slightly. Aries, now you know how powerful swordsmanship is, and there are more benefits to practicing swordsmanship. Practicing swordsmanship can not only cultivate physical agility and dexterity, but also develop a person's instant reaction and endurance, etc. Practice of swordsmanship is not only a physical exercise, it can also have a powerful effect on the mind, strong concentration and decisiveness. He felt it was necessary to tell Aries the benefits of practicing swordsmanship, so as to stimulate this guy to practice swordsmanship hard and seriously. Practicing swordsmanship does have many benefits. On this point, Golden Lion Shiki has a great say. He has been practicing swordsmanship for more than 10 years, and the benefits it has brought to him are extremely huge. After listening to the Golden Lion's serious explanation, Aries's face became serious and he said firmly, I will practice swordsmanship seriously. Then he was even more passionate and confident, and said sonorously and forcefully, I will become a swordsman stronger than everyone else. Aries' extremely serious and firm attitude made the Golden Lion nod with satisfaction. In addition to being a bad drinker and prone to mental confusion, this guy is the most monstrous person he has ever seen in terms of talent, hard work, etc. Golden Lion stretched out his hand and pulled out the other big sharp sword. Ying Ju, from the scabbard, and said, "The size of this sword is not suitable for you, just use it for now, and wait until you have time to find someone to help you. Just build a knife that suits you." As he spoke, he used the power of the Piao Piao fruit to float the sword in front of Aries. It is true that Aries is a bit huge, and he is still growing, so the size of his weapons is not suitable for Aries's physique. His kind of physique is more suitable for a machete or a naginata like Whitebeard Newgate. However, Aries did not reach out for the Golden Lion's knife, and said to the Golden Lion seriously, "I don't need a weapon, my body is my weapon. I believe that one day, my body will be able to surpass the supreme knife." These words made the Golden Lion couldn't help but frown, took a deep breath of the cigar in his mouth, thought for a moment, and said, "Then don't use the sword. I want to see how far you can go in the future. It's really exciting. Maybe you can create your own way of swordsmanship." As for Aries' obsession with turning his body into a famous sword, Golden Lion has also felt the almost morbid and crazy obsession in Aries's heart many times. This is also what drives Aries to exercise his body in a brutal and violent way. He stopped advising, and then stretched out his hand, and Ying Shi flew into his left hand. After thinking for a moment, Golden Lion Shiki warned Aries with a solemn expression, "Then use your arm as a sword, but remember, before your armed haki is not strong enough, never use your hands to resist." The Great Swordsman's Slash. With Aries's current strength, resisting the Great Swordsman's attack will only cause him to be cut in half. Aries nodded and remembered the words of the Golden Lion in his mind. He has always been extremely serious and meticulous in matters that can improve and help him build a sword beyond the supreme. Powerful swordsmanship is not just about unleashing slashes. Although you used flying slashes that only swordsmen can use, your swordsmanship and the power of your slashes are not as powerful as those of real swordsmen. It's too different. The Golden Lion recalled that Aries had just slashed with his arm. Directly poured a basin of cold water on Aries. The Golden Lion held up the dead wood in his hand, his unruly face reflected on the sharp blade, and the cigar kept rising and falling as he spoke. "Now, I will start to break down the simplest single-click swordsmanship movements for you. Only by learning the single-click movements can you perform combos. The first action, Tang Bamboo. Whoosh, a straight strike to the head. The key points and movement requirements for exerting force are." Golden Lion explained this very basic swordsmanship movement to Aries very patiently, and then said, "Because you are using your own body as a weapon, you can try using your arms or legs to make movements in swordsmanship." Aries nodded, then raised his arm high and spread his fingers together to make the shape of a hand knife. Wow, cut it down with one knife. Compared to the sharp and short sound of the wind caused by the Golden Lion wielding the sword with dead wood, the sound of wind caused by Aries's movements is longer and louder, mainly because his arms are very strong. The Golden Lion nodded with satisfaction and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "This talent is indeed far beyond ordinary people. I sincerely hope that you can become a great swordsman in the future. I'm sure you will make a sensation in the whole ocean in the future." He also began to teach Aries swordsmanship, breaking down various basic movements one by one, and then told Aries the essentials. With Aries' inhuman talent, he quickly mastered the basic movements of swordsmanship after half a day of training. The afterglow of the setting sun fell on Aries's body, making his originally bronzed skin darker and shinier, and bead-sized drops of sweat flowed down the outline of his muscles. It's enough to make countless bodybuilding champions in previous lives shed tears of envy. Wow, wow, bang. The sound continued as Aries practiced basic swordsmanship movements, which involved using both hands and feet, using his hands as swords. Use your legs as knives. The Golden Lion's teachings were constantly replayed in his mind, and he was constantly making adjustments based on his own situation. He was not just replaying the Golden Lion's teaching moves, he was also replaying his own moves. Aries can obviously feel that the same movement, changes in his angle, force, etc. will lead to different strength, and his special functions can help him find the mistakes and advantages. Progress is rapid. The Golden Lion is already used to this. Aries really shocked him too much, and he is extremely satisfied with Aries' progress. He sat carelessly on a smooth boulder, and a smile appeared on his lips from time to time. This guy's one day of study can be equivalent to an ordinary person's 1 month, or even longer. If he had appeared on the sea a few years ago, he might have been a powerful and feared man. Gia ha ha ha. Perhaps everything is guided by fate, allowing me, the Golden Lion, to meet such a swordsman genius. This gem will one day attract the attention of the world. For Aries, the Golden Lion's heart is full of love and expectation. After all, there is a saying that goes well, anything may betray you, but hard work will never do it. Those who persist in their dreams and work tirelessly for them will be welcomed wherever they go. The Golden Lion reached out and put out the butt of his cigar, stood up from the big rock, and shouted to Aries, "Hey, Aries, it's time to go back. If you're late, you won't be able to make it in time for dinner." Good. Aries retracted his arm with a look of unfinished expression on his face. He had just stepped into the path of Kendo, not to mention that this amount of training was not worth mentioning to him. The two returned to the skeleton castle. In the cafeteria, under Shaki's murderous gaze, Aries' wind quickly wiped out the food on the table like a cloud. Stacks of plates were stacked high. The Golden Lion handed Aries a bottle of wine and said with a smile, "Aries, you must cultivate your drinking capacity, otherwise how will you enjoy the happiest banquet time of pirates in the future?" Aries also took the wine from the Golden Lion unceremoniously and poured it into his mouth. "Ha, fine wine and meat, so enjoyable." He smacked his lips and continued to devour the food, looking quite barbaric. Shaki on the side clenched his silver teeth tightly and said every word with an angry look, "When are you going to eat?" The piles of plates piled high on the table were taller than any of her people. This guy's appetite has increased again. The food intake has even increased by 1/10 compared to yesterday. How much does this cost? Just eat and do nothing. Gia ha ha ha. The Golden Lion looked at Shaki and said nonchalantly, "It's better to eat more. Aries is growing at its fastest now, so we can't let nutrition fail to keep up." Then he reached out and patted Aries on the shoulder. He laughed like an elder and said caringly, "Aries, go ahead and eat. You can eat as much as you want. Eating more will help your body grow and develop." There was a deep shock in the eyes of the Golden Lion. Aries's food digestion speed is different from ordinary people, and this guy's stomach is not bulging yet. Thinking of this guy's terrifying body, he felt relieved. When he heard Golden Lion's words, Shaki's eyelids twitched, he clenched his teeth so that the filter of the cigarette in his mouth showed deep tooth marks, and asked in surprise, "You said this big guy is still growing?" "Shaki, how old is this guy now?" As the chef of the Rocks Pirates, she suddenly felt that the world had turned dark. Black lines suddenly appeared on the forehead as white as jade. This 4-meter strong guy, several times bigger than a bear, is still growing. This guy can feed dozens of people in one meal. If he continues to grow like this, how much can he eat in one meal? 14 or 15 years old. The Golden Lion replied, and then he just wanted to help Aries solve this problem, but when he thought about losing 100 million Baileys to Whitebeard. In addition, I had been squeezed out a lot by Miss Ba Jin, and now I was short of money, so I gave up this idea. The Golden Lion chuckled and said, "He is an official crew member recognized by Captain Rocks, and this food is free. Don't worry, this guy's fighting ability will soon be able to contribute to the Rocks Pirates." Shaki glared fiercely at Aries, who was devouring the food, stamped his feet angrily, and said helplessly, "Now there are some big guys in the Rocks Pirate group, one is Kaido, one is Linlin, and one is Aries. Can we eat more?" He turned around angrily and walked towards the kitchen. The chefs in the kitchen were so busy that they were sweating profusely in the hot kitchen. "You can't stop moving at all, this is a battle." The Golden Lion said proudly to Aries, "Go ahead and eat with an open stomach. If it's not enough, just ask the chef to make more." If he hadn't spent any money, I would have thought that he was the funder of the treat. A meal. It took almost an hour, and the plates on the table were as tall as 3 or 4 people. "Aries, your talent is so enviable." The Golden Lion stood up from the bench. This guy's appetite and digestion were like an assembly line factory. He continued with some excitement, "A guy like you should become a pirate. Such a person's vitality will be extremely tenacious, and his recovery ability will far exceed that of ordinary people." Hiccup. Aries burped and said happily, "The food here is so delicious, much more delicious than the food I make myself. I have never eaten such delicious food. I want to eat such delicious food every day from now on." In the past few years, he simply roasted the animals he killed on the fire and ate them when they were cooked. And to eat such carefully prepared dishes, with various delicious seasonings and master-level cooking skills, he simply couldn't get enough of it. Feeling extremely excited and happy. Let's go, it's time to go back, the Golden Lion said to Aries. Aries also stood up. His burly body was much taller than the Golden Lion. He looked down at the Golden Lion and said, I still want to train. Even if I practice swordsmanship, my body will not be able to surpass the supreme sharp sword. I cannot stop exercising my physical body every day. The firm and persistent tone left Golden Lion helpless. There was a hint of admiration in his eyes. You are so self-disciplined. If even you can't fulfill your dream. There are not many people in this world who can realize their dreams. The Golden Lion patted Aries on the shoulder with some emotion, and said with some regret, Aries, finally one day you will see the day when I, the Golden Lion, will realize my dream. I hope that at that time, you will stand by my side and share this supreme honor with me. He looked at Aries with burning eyes, with hope in his eyes. Although he was currently in the Rocks Pirates, he believed that one day, I might one day surpass Rocks and become the overlord of this sea. And Aries is definitely the strong man who can help him. Unfortunately, for Aries, who is now 14 or 15 years old and has just come into contact with the outside world, the words of the Golden Lion are like playing the piano to an ox. Instead, he asked with a confused look, then what is your dream? The heroic face of the Golden Lion dropped, and he glanced at the other pirates around him. He did not face the problem directly, but said vaguely, of course it is to become famous in the sea. I will also become famous in the world. Aries said, I know that only famous swords that have been tempered for thousands of times are famous swords recognized by the world. I will do it. At that time, I will be the knife, and the knife will be me. There will be another famous sword in the world that surpasses the unparalleled sword, and it must be Aries. The Golden Lion suddenly burst out laughing. Gia ha ha ha. Go ahead and work hard to fulfill your dream. This vast sea is a place where dreams intertwine and converge. In my view, the Golden Lion, the world is only chasing fame, fortune, and status, but you are different. The dream you pursue will be destined to break the rules and perceptions of the world. I hope you can succeed. He laughed wantonly and turned around to leave. The world will definitely become more interesting because of Aries' appearance. Golden Lion firmly believes this in his heart. Shaki in the kitchen also cast a curious look, looking at Aries with some surprise that this boy could be so valued by the Golden Lion. Have your own persistence and dreams. He thought to himself. It seems that this edible guy is not so annoying. Aries also stepped out of the cafeteria and went straight to the training room. The blood in the body begins to flow faster, and it seems to be slightly heated. It is a good time to train. He knows it too. Choosing to dream of becoming a sword that surpasses the supreme sword is something that ordinary people seem to be unable to accomplish. He doesn't care. Giving up without trying is the sign of a coward, and it is the self-consolation of a coward. Some dreams are not something you can put in front of you and grab in your hands. In the empty training room, there was a loud sound as always, and Aries was the piece of steel that was constantly being beaten. It is destined to be a long and persistent process. The skin and muscles gradually turned red and hot under the beating, and even the temperature of the iron rod in Aries' hand began to gradually increase. Make his skin and muscles become harder. Even the resistance to high temperatures is gradually getting stronger and improving. Quantitative changes will eventually lead to qualitative changes. Bang 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 bang, bang bang. The continuous tapping sound is like a war song, quite rhythmic. Aries suddenly frowned and murmured to himself, it seems I need to find someone to help me tap my back. This back is really not easy to exercise. In his hometown, he can also hit trees and mountains with his back. But here, he had no choice. The house would collapse after this collision. The violent and strong muscles prevent him from bending and turning his arms like normal people to hit his back. The trapezius muscles on his back and the deltoid muscles on his shoulders were so huge that they became an obstacle to his exercise. While he is full of strength and explosive power, it also lacks some physical flexibility. This is inevitable. Aries was forced to use an iron rod to hit the places he could hit, and the area above the center of his back could not be exercised for the time being. 3 or 4 hours later, It's almost 11 or 12 o'clock in the evening. Aries walked out of the training room after training and walked towards the skeleton castle. There are many drunken pirates on the street. A big man wearing silver armor came towards him. It was Silver Axe. Seeing Aries, Silver Axe looked surprised and stepped forward to greet him. Hey, why are you bald? Why haven't you gone back to rest? At that time, his hair was still fine when he was fighting the Golden Lion, but why was Aries's head bald at night? Aries reached out and touched his smooth head and said, I practiced domineering, and my hair fell out for some reason. Where are you going? There was a lewd smile on Silver Axe's face. Of course I want to find a beautiful woman to open up my heart and have a frank talk. If you don't understand, I'll leave first. He waved his hand, burst into laughter and walked towards a brightly lit flower building. Aries really didn't understand why the smile on Silver Axe's face was so strange, and he always had the urge to punch him in the face. Go straight back to your room. After washing, I lay on the bed and fell asleep within a short while. In mind, the scenes that happened during the day were replayed in my mind again and again, from fighting the Golden Lion to practicing swordsmanship. The picture is not blurry at all, but it feels like you are experiencing it all over again, like wearing VR glasses, feeling like you are on the scene. The impressions and insights in my brain about swordsmanship, fighting, domineering, etc. also deepened a little. The next day, Aries got up early as usual. His biological clock seemed to have been strangled to death by God. Wake up on time. Not a day has changed, at least not in recent years. Full of energy, he started training in the training room again. It was not until the arrival of the white-bearded Newgate that Aries ended his morning training. You woke up early enough. You are a talented and hard-working guy. Whitebeard praised with a smile. Aries, go have breakfast first. You are mine all day today. After breakfast, Whitebeard took Aries to the forest far away from the town, put the Konyunchi in his hand on the ground, stood on the ground, and hugged his chest with his hands. He looked at Aries with a smile on his face and said, Aries, let me see what that guy Shiki taught you yesterday. Yeah, Aries nodded and then raised his arm. Slash forward. Wow, a bright blue sword light flew out immediately. It suddenly fell on the tree trunk with a bang, and the broken tree trunk fell to the ground. Nani, learn to slash in half a day. Whitebeard looked at the fallen tree in shock. Although this powerful slash was not as powerful as the slash wielded by the swordsman, it was still more powerful than many cannons. The key thing is that Aries has only been practicing swordsmanship for less than half a day. He suppressed the shocked expression on his face, and his face became solemn and serious. He walked up to Aries, patted him on the shoulder and said, the reason why you can learn to slash in such a short period of time is absolutely because of you. His own powerful and outstanding talent. Instead of the Golden Lion who teaches you well, another person who teaches you swordsmanship will have the same effect. Although he was extremely surprised in his heart, he did not admit that all this was the work of the Golden Lion. It must be Aries' own talent that allowed him to master the flying slash so quickly that it would take others years to master it successfully. Whitebeard's proud heart did not allow him to lose to Whitebeard, and thought to himself, I teach Aries physical skills, and I will definitely make this kid stronger. I will never lose to the swordsmanship of the Golden Lion. Then he started teaching Aries physical skills. Real killing skills. Whitebeard's eyes became sharp, which was a very dangerous signal. His voice was a little low. Aries, a truly strong man is impeccable in every aspect. Through exercise, you can develop a whole body of muscles, but few people can mobilize the body's strength at any time, control the bones, and use the strength of the abdomen, waist, legs, arms, back and other parts of the body to twist them into one. Explode and release all the power in your body. And to do this, your physical skills are just getting started. The real strong masters the energy in his body, which includes blood, muscles, domineering energy, etc. Only when he reaches this level can he truly be called a master of physical arts. Even when you get old, your body muscles will not relax, and people will not show signs of premature aging and death. Quote, a new world opened in front of Aries, a world called physical arts. Let him know that he understands. The strong men in this world are far more powerful than he imagined. From conventional punches and kicks, body control, to reaction and response, as well as how to resolve and weaken the opponent's power. Whitebeard explained in great detail and taught very seriously. He didn't want to lose to the Golden Lion. One day to practice swordsmanship, the other day to practice physical skills. In the morning and evening, Aries spends time exercising and training his body. After 7 or 8 days of this, his progress was also progressing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This day also ushered in Aries' first mission. Akoku also informed Aries of this action 1 day in advance, and took Aries to the port of Beehive Island this morning. There are many pirate ships docked at the port, as well as many merchant ships belonging to black market merchants and underground dark forces. Morning is also the busiest time of the day. Many able-bodied sailors and workers were carrying various goods. Akoku stood next to Aries and said, "Aries, come on board. This mission is very easy. It will be completed in about a month." After several days of practice, he also noticed the difference in Aries. The aura on Aries seemed to become a little sharper and more fierce. Aries, carrying a big iron rod on his back, walked up the ship's ladder. There were already many pirates busy on the ship, unmooring ropes, carrying supplies, retracting anchors, detecting wind direction, etc. Fortunately, Aries is a regular crew member and doesn't need to do these things. After a while, Akoku also boarded the ship, and a pirate immediately came forward to report, "Captain Akoku, the list of supplies is here." He took the supplies list, looked at it carefully, and handed it back to the pirate after confirming that there was nothing wrong with it. Loudly asked the navigator on the boat, "Set sail when you are ready." There was a crash. The huge sail was lowered, and the pirates under the mast immediately tied the sail with ropes. The anchor has been stowed. The sail is fixed. The helmsman is ready. Akoku shouted with high spirits, "Sail, set sail." Chapter 31. The huge pirate ship broke through the sea, stirred up white waves, and began to leave the port. At the same time, there were pirate ships led by other captains. On deck, Akoku reluctantly put his hand into his helmet, picked out his ears and said, "Aries, can you take a break? Don't you want to experience the life of a pirate sailing on the sea?" He leaned on the side of the ship that was wrapped in iron sheets, looking at Aries who was his body with a bored look on his face. "I won't stop until I complete my dream," Aries replied expressionlessly. After practicing physical skills with Whitebeard Newgate, he gained a better understanding of his own body. He also tried to deliberately control and inflate his muscles when the iron rod hit his body to resist the impact of the iron rod. Reduce the damage and pain caused by the iron rod. Constant tapping. The sounds made the pirates around look at the monster with horrified expressions. The matter of Aries has long been spread on Beehive Island. However, I was still shocked and surprised to see such a brutal and violent training method with my own eyes. Many pirates were so frightened that cold sweat broke out on their faces, and they felt uncomfortable all over. Akoku raised his head and looked at the blue sky. He didn't know whether he was talking to Aries or to himself. How many people are born to be pirates? Are you destined to be a pirate from birth? Then he raised his head, looked at Aries, and said with a smile, "Aries, most of the pirates on the ship are pirates who have no relatives. The moment they became pirates, they all had their own dreams and pursuits. But there are too many temptations in this sea, and the dangers are too high. Countless people have gradually forgotten their original dreams." Akoku laughed somewhat self-deprecatingly, and the smile on his face gradually widened, looking a bit unruly and domineering. As a pirate without relatives, he naturally has to pursue his dreams without hesitation. Do something spectacular and become famous all over the world. I hope you don't get lost in pursuing your dreams. His words made many of the pirates present look ashamed. They once had dreams, but now they just live a life of burning, killing, looting, and living an indulgent and numb life. Akoku didn't say this unintentionally. Captain Rox placed Aries under his command, and he naturally shouldered the task of teaching Aries how to become a pirate. Aries usually trains, and this mission happens to be an opportunity to teach Aries. Aries turned to look at Akoku and said firmly, "I will keep going." The iron rod in his hand was hammered towards his body vigorously, and even his muscles as hard as rock vibrated under the blow of the iron rod. With the strengthening of his body control and the deliberate use of his own muscles to weaken the strength of the iron rod, the power in his hands was slightly heavier than a few days ago. "I hope so." Akoku smiled incredulously. This person is just like a ship on the sea. He will always deviate from the direction inadvertently. Even the most skilled navigator still needs to constantly use the compass and record the pointer to locate the direction, and let the helmsman control the rudder to adjust its direction. This can ensure that the ship does not yaw. More than a day later, the pirate ship successfully arrived at the first island. This mission trip has officially started, and that is to collect protection fee. This model has gradually replaced the pirate model that relied entirely on robbery for a living. Rox established a huge pirate group organization, which also required huge wealth to maintain its rule and recruit soldiers to buy weapons, ships, cannons, guns, and consumption of pirates. Both require a lot of supplies and Bailey. After collecting the protection fee for an island, they rushed to the next island without stopping. As more and more supplies are carried on the ship's sailing speed gradually slows down. It is now the 12th day since leaving Beehive Island. Akoku looked at the blue sky and blue sea boredly, holding his forehead with a headache, and said to himself depressedly, maybe it was a mistake to bring this guy Aries out. Next time, except for fighting matters, don't bring him with you. The scenes that emerged in his mind were all pictures of Aries eating like crazy. Nearly half of the food on the ship was destroyed by Aries alone. Most of the protection fees are supplies, otherwise the supplies on the ship would not be enough for Aries to consume. With his elbows resting on the side of the ship, he looked back at Aries, who was on the deck despite the weather. This guy was still training on the deck even in stormy weather. At that time, Akoku was really worried that his iron rod would be struck by lightning from the sky, which made him feel frightened just looking at it. Fortunately, that didn't happen. It would be troublesome if he was struck by lightning or killed. Akoku asked the navigator on the deck, "Hey, how long does it take to reach the next island?" He almost vomited at the unchanging scenery on the sea. "It's almost there, it should only be an hour or two." The navigator looked at the navigation chart in his hand and roughly judged his current location. An hour or two later, everyone could already clearly see the island, and the pirates couldn't help but become excited and happy. Suddenly, a pirate on the observation deck on the mast shouted with horror, "Oh no, a pirate ship is rushing towards us." He raised the telescope in his hand and looked at the flag of the pirates. His face suddenly turned pale, cold sweat could not stop flowing out, and he shouted at the top of his lungs, It's the Wald Pirates." Quote, "Hear the name." Akoku's expression suddenly changed. He pulled out the huge long sword from his waist, raised it high and shouted, "Everyone, prepare to fight." The helmsman changed direction immediately. Artilleryman reloads. Quote, "On the deck, the pirates wiped away their previous laziness, their faces became tense and even vicious, and they began to get busy. Aries also stopped training, walked to Akoku and asked, "Akoku, are the Wald Pirates so powerful?" "Of course it's awesome." Akoku stared nervously at the ship that was still a black dot in the distance, and said in a serious tone, "The captain of Wald is Berndi Wald, known as the World Destroyer, with a bounty of 200 million belly. It is an extremely famous and powerful pirate group." He clenched the huge sword in his hand tightly and knitted his eyebrows together. "Do you know how Wald got the title of World Destroyer?" Because whether it was the residents of the town, the marine warships, or the powerful pirates, they were all destroyed by this guy. Hence the title Destroyer of Worlds. "It seems we're in big trouble this time. It seems we have encountered a big fish this time. Brother." Berndi Wald put down the telescope and handed it to a man on his shoulder who looked like a dwarf and wore a helmet with a broken horn. Ahem. Binjak coughed twice for the man whom Wald called his eldest brother, then raised the telescope with his skinny hands, and his expression suddenly changed. With shock and worry on his face, he coughed twice and tried to dissuade Walder. "Ahem. That's the ship of the Rox Pirates. We'd better not conflict with them." I don't know whether it was because of his body shape or a physical disease that caused Binjak's voice to sound a little soft. Bondwald looked at the pirate ship on the distant sea, and said firmly, "Whatever the Rox Pirates are, I Bondwald only know that there must be a lot of materials and treasures on their ship. Brother, how can we build a pirate ship of our dreams without money? No matter what is in front of me, Bondwald, I will make him disappear." His loud voice shocked the pirates on the deck, and everyone fell silent. Wald turned to look at his three cadres, with a ruthless look in his eyes, and said in a cold tone, 3 minutes, kill the enemy within 3 minutes, don't exceed the time I set. Yes, yes, quote quote. The huge fish man with blue skin color stood up immediately and said with strong confidence on his face, 3 minutes are enough. Let us destroy that ship. Whoosh. The fishman Sebastian jumped from the deck of the ship into the air, and crashed into the sea from the air with a bang, making a sound like an explosion and splashing a large crystal wave. He is a hybrid of a fishman and a giant, which makes his body several times larger than the average fishman. On deck, when the other 2 cadres were about to land on Sebastian's back, Banquet on Wald's shoulder exclaimed, "There are enemies coming from the sea, from the sea." Holding a telescope, he clearly saw a figure on the sea swimming quickly approaching the pirate ship. Ha! Wald was immediately surprised, and then burst out laughing. Wow, wow, wow. I didn't expect that the other party would have the courage to fight back. But no one can resist me, Wald. You guys, let me shell you. Blast that guy in the sea into pieces and make it fish food. Under his command, the pirates on the ship immediately lit the fuse of the cannon, and the sparks burned and made a hissing sound that spread rapidly. Cannons were suddenly fired from the dark and cold barrel. Bang, bang, bang. In the cold sea water, Aries quickly swung his arms back and forth, and kicked off a large wave of waves with his feet. He was the one who quickly approached the Wald pirate ship in the sea. The captain said that fighting can sharpen a man into an indestructible sword. After exercising for so many days, my body is already very hungry and thirsty. I want to fight. Aries looked up at the sky, and shells fell one after another. He immediately dived, changed his trajectory, and avoided the bombardment of the shells. The splashing water and rough waves could not stop him. When he thought about the powerful opponent, even the cold seawater could not stop the blood in his body from boiling and heating up. Time passes, going back a minute or 2. On a pirate ship. When he heard from Akoku that the opponent was an extremely powerful opponent, Aries' eyes suddenly lit up, like a beast seeing delicious prey. Then, before Akoku could react, he jumped into the sea with a thud. Nani? Akoku was confused for a moment. His hands shook and he almost pulled off the black beard on his chin. He immediately looked panicked and shouted towards Aries in the sea, "Hey! Aries! Come back quickly!" But under the strong wind and roaring sea water, his voice was intertwined with other voices, making Aries unable to hear it clearly at all. Oops! Akoku cursed anxiously in his heart, now is the real big trouble. This guy is really reckless. In a hurry, he punched the iron-wrapped side of the ship, making a dent. So brave, how reckless. Opposite is the famous Wald Pirates. Marine has launched many hunting operations, but all failed, or even suffered heavy losses. Aries rushing over like this is no different from dying. Akoku's face darkened, and he quickly made a decision. He immediately shouted to the pirates on the deck, "Turn around and prepare to fight." After giving the order, he turned and looked towards the sea. With a worried and nervous look on his face, "Aries, nothing can happen to you. If something happens to you, Shiki and Newgate will have to take off all my armor." I was anxious and angry, worried and cursed secretly. In sea water, the fishman Sebastian, the leader of the Wald Pirates, poked his head out of the sea with a disdainful smile. What a stupid pirate, abandoning his friends and choosing to sneak into the sea to attack alone. In the sea, it's our fishmen's world. With a cold face, he looked confident of victory, and then his head disappeared on the sea. The whole person was like a torpedo missile being launched, swimming towards Aries at an extremely fast speed in the sea water. As a descendant of the fishmen and giants, he inherited the giants' huge size and strength, and even their enviable lifespan. But at the same time, it also retains the characteristics of the fish people. In the sea water, it can be described in 4 words, like a fish in water. On a pirate ship, Walter raised his hand and sneered, "Stop the bombardment, Sebastian takes action, that guy won't survive 30 seconds. He is also extremely confident in the strength of his cadres. What's more, in the sea, Sebastian of the fishmen tribe is born with an insurmountable racial advantage." He set his sights on the conspicuous Akoku, wearing golden shiny armor on the other pirate's ship, Akoku, the leader of the Rocks Pirates. With a grin on his face, he said, "I wonder how long it can last in my hands." But Banquet on his shoulder reminded with a sad face, "Ward, ahem, don't be careless. The opponent's pirate ship has turned around, which shows that the guy in the sea is extremely important. Ordinary pirates. Ahem, they gave up long ago. He knew that the Rock's pirates were an extremely cruel and realistic pirate group. You will never choose to give up escaping and start a head-on war just because of an ordinary pirate. Berndi Wald had a smile on her face that made her green beard stand up. It's too late, Sebastian has already approached that boy. As he spoke, he took out a pocket watch with great interest, read it, and remembered the time. He said with great certainty, the outcome will be determined within 10 seconds. In rough waters, Aries also noticed that the huge blue fish man was swimming towards him very quickly in the sea water. Enemy. His eyes suddenly burst into light, which was a high-spirited and hot desire to fight. Aries grinned widely, revealing the 2 rows of white, jade-like teeth in his mouth, and said excitedly, then let's use the enemy to test the results of these days of training. The pair of eyes that were several times the size of an ordinary person stared at the fish man in the water, and at the same time, his heart was beating surgingly. Excitement and anticipation. A strong surprise arose in my heart, he is so fast in the water. If I learn his swimming power generation method, will I be able to reach such a fast speed in the water, or even be faster than him? As a result, he stopped directly and stared at the fishmen flying towards him with all his attention. Looking at Aries' appearance, the fishman Sebastian smiled proudly. Stupid pirate, are you scared by my speed in the water? In the sea water, we fishmen have unique advantages. This is the powerful ability bestowed by God on the fishmen. In just a moment, the distance between the 2 sides was shortened from hundreds of meters to tens of meters. He took out his finned hand and immediately caught the seawater in his hand. He threw it again, all in one movement. The seawater in my hand actually split into more than 10 small water balls. Like a bullet, it has powerful penetrating power to break through the seawater, and shoots towards Aries rapidly in the seawater. It can make a sizzling sound in the seawater at a speed exceeding that of a bullet. Oya takes aim. This is an attack method created from the fishman boxing technique, which can turn harmless water droplets into weapons that are as lethal as bullets or even surpass bullets. What a unique move. Aries was suddenly surprised. This boxing technique was beyond his expectation and completely different from some of the physical techniques taught to him by Whitebeard Newgate. And this blow was deeply imprinted in his mind. Facing the fierce attack of the fishman, Aries suddenly bent his legs, and kicked his legs back like a frog. Bang! A large amount of seawater was stirred up, causing his figure to suddenly jump forward more than 10 meters, avoiding the bullet-like water ball. 3 seconds have passed. Including the previous time, it took about 10 seconds in total. The fishman Sebastian also suddenly came to Aries, his voice full of judgmental contempt. Go to hell. Anyone who stands in front of the Wald Pirates will die. He put his feet together, swung gently like a fish's tail, and suddenly crossed the last few meters and appeared in front of Aries. A punch was thrown out, and the surging seawater hit Aries in the face. The next second, Sebastian's face was moved and full of disbelief. His heart suddenly shook and he shouted, "Impossible! How can humans be so fast in the sea?" His confident punch actually failed. Then his expression became solemn. No, he obviously didn't have such a fast speed before. Could it be that this guy was already swimming very fast in the sea, but he just didn't use it before? Sebastian looked up at Aries, who had his head out of the sea and was breathing, and sneered, "You were almost fooled, but in the sea, you have no chance of victory. 5 seconds, 5 seconds I will kill you." And Aries took a deep breath and dived his head into the sea. He was very excited and said, "It's such a unique way of swimming. It increased my speed in the sea a lot. Although I haven't completely mastered it yet, I have already gained a lot, but it's hard to master the seawater attack method yet." He stretched out his hand and tried to imitate the fishman, grabbing the seawater, but the flowing seawater made it impossible for him to grab it with one hand and condense Sebastian's kind of water ball. Aries firmly believes that as long as he continues to learn and practice, he will one day be able to learn the special attack method of the fishmen. Now he has no time to comprehend, because Sebastian has already waved his fist and hit him. This time, Aries also waved his fist to meet him. The obstruction of the seawater instantly made him feel that the power of his fist was greatly weakened. The resistance of seawater far exceeds the resistance of air. It made him feel that his punches were extremely unsmooth. Not only was his strength weakened, but his speed was also reduced a lot. He finally understood why the strange and ugly blue fish man in front of him was so arrogant before. Bang! Two fists of about the same size suddenly collided together in the sea water, making a dull sound. The sea water stirred and became chaotic. What? This kid is so powerful. Sebastian was shocked. The opponent was suppressed by the sea water, and this punch was on par with his own. Terrible physical strength. His expression suddenly changed and he cursed angrily. Then he roared and punched fiercely again. Murloc fist, big hit in the water. Armed, mountain-breaking fist. And Aries also shouted loudly. His arms instantly became red and hot, and huge and terrifying veins protruded from under his skin, like green snakes coiled on his skin. Even the cold sea water made a hissing sound as it evaporated, and a large amount of white mist rose towards the sea surface. His weird arms immediately made Sebastian's heart beat violently, and he felt intense uneasiness in his heart. Boom! Sebastian suddenly felt an extremely large and irresistible, strange force, impacting his body through his fists. His body flew out instantly. A splash of bright red blood spurted out from the mouth, mixed with the sea water, and gurgling bubbles rose up from the mouth. Aries grinned and was secretly surprised. The captain is right. Fighting can really temper yourself. His fists seemed to have no resistance in the sea water. If I can learn it, I will definitely become stronger. He did not pursue the victory. He clamped his legs together and swam to the surface with a splash. He took a deep breath again and plunged his head into the sea. We need to learn something from that fish man. This was the thought in his mind. Just like when he was hunting on his home island a few years ago, he would always torture the beast until it was dying and dying before stopping. Until the beast is almost drained of all its abilities. The difference from normal children is that other people's toys may be real toys, but Aries's toys are ferocious beasts on the island. The difference in living environment leads to completely different things that children are exposed to in childhood. But they all have one thing in common, that is, they are really fun and full of interest. When Aries raised his head out of the sea for the second time, Wald couldn't help frowning and muttered with some dissatisfaction, "What is that guy Sebastian doing? 30 seconds have passed, why haven't you killed the enemy yet?" The originally planned 30 seconds had now reached about 40 seconds. This made Wald feel dissatisfied in his heart, which was directly reflected on his face. He snorted angrily. Humph, if Sebastian can't kill the enemy, then let that guy starve for a few days. Binjak on his shoulder had a worried look on his face, frowning and looking at the sea. The rough sea in the distance made it impossible for people to see the situation under the sea. Cough cough, cough cough. The strong worry and uneasiness made his coughing aggravate. He turned to look at Wald's angry face and suggested, "Wald, let someone take a look at Sebastian's condition. Let everyone prepare for battle. The enemy's ships are approaching us." 40 seconds. The two ships sailing opposite each other were also approaching quickly, from a distance of several thousand meters to a distance of only a few hundred meters. Yeah, Wald looked up at the other party and shouted directly to the pirate beside him, "Bring me a cannonball. I want that guy Akoku to see the power of my world destroyer, Wald's multiplier fruit." The pirate on the side immediately held a heavy bomb in his hands and sent it to Wald. Wald reached out and grabbed the dark bomb in the pirate's hand. Throwing the heavy bomb in his hand, he looked at the pirate ship in the distance with a joking expression, and a ferocious aura suddenly erupted from his body. The thick arm held up the bomb in his hand. "Let everything in front of you be destroyed. Let's have a gorgeous explosion show." He exerted his strength with his arm and threw the bomb in his hand with a whooshing sound. Doubling 100 times cannon. When the high-speed flying bomb was halfway through its flight, it suddenly grew larger in size. Once, twice, 3 times, directly from a bowling ball size to a cannonball as big as a car. The huge cannonballs frightened the pirates on the deck with fear on their faces, and they broke out in cold sweat. Panic and screaming sounds sounded. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded on the deck. Yidao Lu seeks straightness in the song. Warrior, Akoku, wearing thick gold armor, jumped up suddenly, holding a several-meter-long gleaming sword and slashed in the air. Laugh. A flash of silver light flashed. Across a distance of more than 10 meters, the huge bomb in the sky suddenly broke through. Gorgeous split in two. It split into two halves and fell from both sides of his body, hitting the left and right sides of the ship with a loud bang, causing a large splash of waves to fall on the deck. Akoku split the bomb with his sword and did not stop. He shouted towards Wald in the distance, "Let me try too." What is the ability of the guy who is called the destroyer of the world and has a bounty of 200 million from Marine? Quote. Then he held the sword in both hands and waved it in the air. One sword style, flying slash. It has the charm of flying down 3,000 feet inside, and a bright and gorgeous white sword light suddenly bursts out from the long sword. The huge slash of 20 to 30 meters was so fast that it tore the air and made a harsh sound. The speed seemed to be so fast that it broke the sound barrier. What a powerful slash! Seeing such a fierce and sharp slash, Wald couldn't help but praise him, and said with a ferocious smile, as expected of the leader of the Rocks Pirates, the golden armored swordsman with a bounty of 180 million, Akoku. His expression became fierce, and he reached out and snatched the long knife held by his pirate. "Brother, hold on to me." Berndi Wald gave a warning to Binjak on her shoulder, then stepped on the wooden board with her feet and performed the shaving in the 6 moves. He jumped into the air and appeared at an altitude of 20 or 30 meters. He stepped hard on his feet and made a sonic boom sound. The whole person completed the turn in the air and went straight to slash. He yelled excitedly, doubling 100 times. The long knife in his hand instantly grew in size, and in the blink of an eye it turned into a sword tens of meters long. He held the broadsword high with both hands and slashed hard, meeting the slashing blow. Boom! The deafening sound resounded across the sea. The bright sword light instantly shattered into countless fragments and dissipated in the air. Wald, who smashed the attack with a knife, immediately burst out laughing. "Waluoluluo." He said loudly and proudly, "I am a multiplier who has eaten the multiplication fruit." The loud laughter resounded across the sea. Akoku saw that his slash was easily broken by the opponent, and his face immediately darkened, as this Berndi Wald, the destroyer of worlds. He is really powerful. Bringing that guy Aries out is really a hassle. Originally, it was enough to just follow the ship and run away, but at worst, throw some of the heavy materials on the ship directly into the sea, and there should be no problem in escaping. Now, Berndi Wald's great strength cast a shadow over Akoku's heart. The opponent is very strong. He is so powerful that even if he is a leader of the Rocks Pirates, he does not have the confidence to defeat Berndi Wald. Akoku couldn't help but feel worried. What's going on with Aries now? It would be a big trouble if he was killed in sea water. Sebastian, who is a mixture of fishmen and giants, cursed in his heart, "What the hell kind of monster is this? It has the power to surpass his own giant. This kid is even swimming faster and faster in the sea." This made him feel as if he had seen a ghost. Is he a giant or is he a giant? Is he a fish man or is he a fish man? Originally the advantage was mine. Now, Sebastian really feels that his advantage in the water is getting smaller and smaller. The key is that his extremely confident strength is weaker than his opponent. I couldn't help but curse in my heart, "You are really perverted. I won't play with you anymore." He felt as if the other party was teasing him. Using the same moves, the other party would punch him hard. Use fresh moves to reduce the strength on your hands. Basically, he is playing with himself. Simply abominable. It's just a fish, is it that fun? Having made up his mind, Sebastian turned around and ran away. He really didn't want to fight this monster anymore. Run away. Aries looked stunned, then glared, and said fiercely, "I won't let this guy like you run away so easily, I have to squeeze him dry. His attack method is so powerful that the resistance of my fist in the seawater is reduced, and the strength is reduced even less. And that strange ability to control water. I have to write it down and then go back and practice hard." Aries swung his legs and immediately swam in the sea like a cannonball, just like a free fish. Just not a mermaid, but a violent muscular man. The momentum and speed were just like a small submarine sailing at full speed. However, his speed was still not as fast as Sebastian of the Fishmen tribe. He followed Sebastian and deeply engraved every detail of his opponent's movements in his mind. So that you can study later. A few seconds later, Sebastian jumped out of the water and climbed neatly along the hull of the ship to the deck with his hands and feet. Sebastian, a man with a huge hammer on his back, Guy Ram, a leader of the Wald Pirates and a cube fruit user, hurriedly asked him, "How is it? Did you kill that kid?" Before Sebastian could answer, there was a crash and movement from the sea, and Aries climbed up along the hull and appeared in everyone's sight. A large amount of seawater flowed on the deck along Aries's bronzed and hard muscles. "You didn't kill him," Nakin, the ship's doctor of the Wald Pirates, exclaimed with a surprised look on his face. Sebastian was a powerful officer on the ship. As a hybrid of fishmen and giants, he has unique advantages and incomparable strength when fighting in the sea. "In sea water, didn't that kill this guy?" Sebastian looked at Aries nervously, and reminded his companions solemnly, "Don't be careless, this guy is very weird. His power is extremely terrifying, and his speed in swimming in the sea is not slower than that of a fish man." Recalling this kid's terrifying power, his fists and chest felt a dull pain. His power was even more terrifying than that of the giants. What a scary guy. Weird. Garp reached out and took off the hammer that was bigger than his body on his back, and said confidently, "In front of my fruit ability, even the most terrifying power is useless." He raised the sledgehammer in his hand and struck it down on the deck. Bang! The deck was not broken, but instead, streaks of light emerged that divided the overtime, showing pieces of boxy cubes. Rubik's Cube. Confusion. Pieces of cubes floated up from the ground deck and were suspended in the air. Is it the power of the devil fruit? Aries looked slightly surprised. He also learned some basic information about devil fruit from Golden Lion and White Beard. It is generally known that devil fruits are divided into 3 categories: zoology, paramesha, logia. Each devil fruit has its own unique abilities. He also secretly became vigilant. Moment. Those suspended cubes immediately smashed towards Aries, like cannonballs. Aries' expression remained unchanged, and he punched the cubes away with a bang, and said to himself, "It's such a strange ability to be able to separate things and turn them into cubes." His body was like a majestic tower, motionless. "You still have some strength, then try this move of mine." Garp laughed and put the sledgehammer on the ground. A glowing cube suddenly appeared between his hands. Aries noticed something strange at first glance. It was because the air was compressed. He couldn't help but look surprised. This devil fruit's ability can also compress air, but what attack effect does air compression have? He had never seen such a weird attack method before, which greatly surprised him. "I also find it very interesting. Air, Rubik's Cube." The cube emitting crystal white light was thrown directly towards Aries by Garp. Aries also quickly raised his arm and slashed forward. "Although I don't know what this thing is, I still don't touch it easily." This is what Whitebeard Newgate told him. When facing someone with devil fruit abilities, you must not easily come into contact with them before you know their abilities. As his arm fell violently, he let out a roar. "Itoryu Tangju." A bright blue sword light flew out from Aries' arm in a flash. Boom! In the blink of an eye, it hit the bright white air cube, and a deafening explosion sounded. A large cloud of white smoke suddenly filled the deck. This kid actually used his body to strike. Nakin, who was wearing heavy makeup, screamed in shock, "This kid is so fierce." The so-called slashing attack is naturally an attack method that can be used when the speed reach a certain level. However, if this method is used with weapons, it is not something that ordinary people can achieve. What's more, the tall, muscular man in front of him actually used his thick arms to swing out such a fierce slash. She finally understood why Sebastian said this guy was weird and had extremely terrifying power. "This time I really saw it. There is actually such a fierce person." The pirates on the deck became nervous one after another, with expressions of fear on their faces, and drops of cold sweat appeared on their temples and foreheads. "Air compression can be more powerful than bombs, air." "I see." Aries's eyes lit up, and he suddenly realized something. His face was full of surprise, and he instantly understood some of the secrets of slashing. Powerful speed and force move the air. His big copper eyes shone brightly, and he looked at the pirates on the deck like a ferocious beast, grinning, "Thank you very much for letting me learn so much about fighting. Captain Rox is right, fighting can sharpen a man into an indestructible sword. Now, I seem to be looking forward to fighting more and more." In just a few minutes, he learned how the fishmen can swim quickly in the sea, the special method of boxing to control water, and learned some of the secrets of slashing from the air cube. The battle is not over yet, there are many rewards. The dripping water fell on the wooden floor under his feet. His whole body was full of high-spirited fighting spirit, which made his already majestic body exude a savage and violent aura as frightening as a terrifying beast. The members of the Wald Pirates who were stared at by Aries' fierce eyes couldn't help but shudder, and the hairs all over their bodies stood up like animals encountering natural enemies. This guy, you should know by now that there is something wrong and weird. Sebastian's face was gloomy, and his heart beat loudly. You can't defeat this guy in the sea, and I'm afraid he can't do it on a boat, but fortunately he still has his partner. The leader of the Wald Pirates stood up, opened his lips painted with pink hearts, and smiled. Haha. This kid is the only one. There are so many of us, it's impossible for him to defeat us. Let this reckless boy know how powerful our Wald Pirates are. As he spoke, he reached out and took out a paper-wrapped medicinal powder from his body, and poured the pink powder into his mouth. He shouted excitedly, Chinese medicine boxing method, secret medicine, Korea's newcomer. Nakan jumped into the air. Just like the transformation of Sailor Moon, her arms and legs, which were originally short, have become longer. Not only that, even the breasts have become tall and plump, trembling and swaying, attracting people's attention. Aries was immediately eye-opened, and said, Nani, what kind of punch is this? It can actually change a person's appearance. It's really weird. It simply refreshed his cognition. By taking the medicine, the originally ugly, short-limbed, skinny woman in front of him turned into a tall, slender, curvy woman with delicate and fair skin. It's like opening up a new world for Aries. Just when he was surprised, Nakan launched an attack, spitting out a piece of green poisonous mist from his mouth. Chinese medicine poison. Aries quickly jumped up and dodged, and the wooden plank at his feet was immediately corroded and destroyed by the green poisonous mist, leaving holes. Just as he was dodging, Sebastian suddenly launched an attack. Suffer death. No matter what kind of pirate you are on the ship of the Wald Pirates, there is only one way to die. One punch. There was a sound of breaking through the air, and the fierce fist force caused ripples in the air. Looking at the unchanged punch, Aries frowned, and the strong muscles in his arms swelled like raised bricks. What is even more horrifying is that the bronze skin turned into a blood-red color. Wisps of white smoke came out of his arms. Armed, Great Ape King Fist. That weird and terrifying punch made the air vibrate. Aries had already gone all out with this punch. The air was filled with a violent and ear-splitting explosion. The wind is howling. The momentum is huge. Sebastian's face suddenly turned pale. Just from the sound of the punch, it could be seen that the punch was a complete mess. But he couldn't dodge the attack at all. He could only bite the bullet and let his fist hit him. Bang, click, two different voices sounded in everyone's ears one after the other, followed by an extremely painful and tearing wailing sound. Ah, my hands. The huge fishman Sebastian flew out immediately, smashed the side of the ship with a bang, and fell into the sea. Just when everyone felt a chill in their hearts and felt intense fear, a burst of laughter came. Ha ha, I got it. Garp, the leader of the Wald Pirates, appeared in midair holding a huge hammer. Swinging a huge hammer drives the roaring wind. He had a confident smile on his face as he said, go to hell. Big bald guy. Garp could already predict that with his hammer, the opponent's head would be like a watermelon that burst open. Bang. The huge hammer hit Aries hard on the head with great force. But the next second, everyone was dumbfounded. Kadri Guy Ram's eyes widened suddenly, and he had strong doubts in his heart. Did I knock on steel? Why is his head so hard? What kind of monster is this? After I hit him, the other party actually didn't do anything. While he was dazed, Aries punched Garp with a backhand, hitting Garp's face with a bang. The terrifying force instantly made his entire face dent and distorted. Saliva, broken teeth, blood, etc. sprayed out of the mouth. He was instantly knocked away by Aries and fell directly into the sea. So scary. Aries reached out and touched his bald head, and said to himself with some dissatisfaction, it still hurts a little, I need to continue to exercise. Saw this horrifying scene. One of the pirates suddenly wet his pants and peed on the spot. A smell filled the air and was blown away by the sea breeze. Some pirates screamed, and the weapons in their hands dropped to the deck in fright. Is this guy's head made of iron? Why did he get a heavy hammer blow from Garp on the head and nothing happened? This is a monster. Everyone looked at Aries with horror on their faces. Even the Kadri Nakan was no exception. He stepped back with high heels and shouted with a trembling voice, "Monster! This guy is a monster. How is it possible that someone was hit on the head by Gyram, and not even hurt?" She kept retreating, and finally hit the bow plank with a bang, and her body couldn't help but tremble. The strong man in front of me was too strong. Kadri, Sebastian and Gyram were defeated by this guy with one punch one after another. And at this time, a shell suddenly hit the hull on one side of the ship, making a loud rumble accompanied by a burst of thick black smoke. The entire ship shook violently. A pirate rolled from one side of the ship to the other side of the deck in horror, shouting in horror, "What happened?" "Yes, it's Marine." A pirate grabbed the side of the ship and stuck his head out to see the huge Marine warship sailing rapidly on the sea. The elegant seagull flutters at the top of the ship's mast with the flag of Libra in its mouth. "Marine." Aries immediately looked up and found a huge Marine warship. His eyes were shining. Akoku said that Marine is an extremely powerful organization in this sea, and there are many strong people in it. There must be strong people on such a large warship. The blood that had just been silent in the body began to boil again. These pirates were really no challenge. Even so, he gained a lot. And fighting the powerful Marine will definitely help you learn more. Aries immediately jumped off the deck without hesitation and fell into the sea with a thud. Seeing Aries leaving, Nakan, the leader of the Wald Pirates, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and reached out to wipe the sweat from his forehead, but before she could calm down a little, an exclamation on the deck almost scared her heart out. That's Vice Admiral Marine. Garp's warship." Garp. Nakan's mind suddenly went blank. Marine Lieutenant General Garp. One of the most powerful Marine generals in Marine today. It can be said that he is one of the Marine generals that countless pirates least want to encounter. Today, the strongest Marine generals are none other than Wise General Sengoku, Iron Fist, Garp, and Black Arm, Zephyr. And Marine Fleet Admiral Cyborg Sora. Marine Lieutenant General Garp represents one of Marine's strongest battles currently. He's here to capture the captain. This idea came to Nakan's mind instantly, and he became panicked. With a look of anxiety and panic on her face, she immediately shouted to the pirate men on the deck, "Go to the sea and fish Sebastian and Gyram out. We must find the captain immediately and get out of here. If he is caught by Marine Lieutenant General Garp, he will probably be sent to prison and pushed into the city." At this time, Nakan also suddenly thought of the kid whose name she didn't know before, and felt a sense of joy in her heart. That monster-like guy is probably looking for trouble with Marine. I hope he can delay it for a while. Buy time for us to escape. Aries plunged into the sea and quickly swam towards the Marine warship using the swimming skills he had just learned from Sebastian. On board the Marine warship, a man wearing a black suit, his suit bulging with plump and muscular muscles, stood tall and straight, and the white cloak of justice on his body swayed in the wind with the blowing sea breeze. He grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth, and an excited smile appeared on his face. "I didn't expect to meet the leaders of the Wald Pirates and the Rocks Pirates at the same time." "Very good. It happens that sailing on the sea is a bit boring, so let's play with them. Send them to jail again." He placed his hands horizontally in front of his body, moved his fingers and wrists, and made a clicking sound from his muscles and bones. "Is it finally time to fight? Let Monkey D. Drago destroy those evil pirates." At this time, a slightly green voice sounded, with strong courage and fighting spirit in the voice. The person who spoke was a young man who was over 1 meter tall, with a somewhat evil face and fair complexion. But as soon as he said these words, a fist as big as a sandbag fell on his head with a bang. A big purple bump suddenly appeared on Dorig's head and hung on his forehead. "It hurts. It hurts." This punch immediately caused Dorag to squat down and scream with his head in his hands. The Marines on the side were so frightened that they fell silent and broke out in cold sweat. Marine Lieutenant General Garp's sonorous voice also sounded in Dolig's ears. "When will you learn the 6 postures before you can participate in the battle? You are still a child, you are not allowed to join such a battle. The enemy is the powerful Wald Pirates and Rocks Pirates cadres. With Drago's little strength, he will be defeated if he goes up to them." Garp also taught Dorag a painful lesson without hesitation, the Iron Fist of Love. Garp punched the log. He didn't care about Dolig's resentful eyes. He calmly stretched out his fingers to press his nostrils and squinted at Delog. Jean Delog immediately turned his head, clenched his fists tightly, and muttered with a very unwilling expression, "You still treat me like a child." At this time, he was still a 13-year-old boy, wearing a white sailor uniform without military rank. Garp also set his sights on Wald and Akoku, the leader of the Rocks Pirates, who were fighting on the pirate ship in the distant sea. He said with an excited expression, "I'll catch them all this time." Suddenly, Garp's expression changed, and his sensitive senses seemed to detect something, and he grinned. "It seems that someone is here to cause trouble." And Dorag suddenly stretched his head and looked around, puzzled in his heart. As Garp finished speaking, a huge, bare head that reflected the sun emerged from the side of the ship. Aries moves quickly. In a matter of seconds, he rolled over the side of the ship and appeared on the deck of the marine warship. His appearance was full of large bulging muscles and a huge body, and his whole body exuded an extremely ferocious, wild and violent aura. It brought an extremely strong sense of oppression to the Marines. It immediately caused a panic commotion among the Marines on the deck. "It's a pirate, but why is he here? Who is this guy? Doesn't he know that this is Vice Admiral Garp's warship? So tall and big, does this guy have giant blood? The muscles are so big, they're like brass." Quote. In an instant, dozens of muskets were aimed at Aries, and the dark muzzles were pointed at him. Dorag looked at the man who appeared in front of him in confusion and said to himself, "Why did this guy come to the marine warship alone? Aren't the pirates still fighting over there?" Garp, on the other hand, said to Aries carelessly, "Boy, do you want to join Marine? You have a great physique. You will definitely become an outstanding Marine in the future." Upon hearing this, the faces of the Marines on the ship, including Delog, instantly darkened, and black lines appeared on their foreheads. Aries looked at Garp. If nothing unexpected happened. The man in front of him was the highest officer on the marine warship. Facing dozens of firecrackers, he said calmly, "No, I will not join the Marine. I'm a pirate." Then the ferocious eyes looked around and asked, "Who among you is the strongest? Let him fight me." Upon hearing these arrogant words, Dorag instantly became angry and turned to look at his father, but a huge snot bubble appeared on Garp's nose. Asleep. Dorag was speechless. The big pirate in front of him had such a loud voice that his own father could even fall asleep. "Accepted. What are you doing standing still? Shoot!" Drago yelled at the Marines on the deck with great dissatisfaction. The Marines on the deck pulled the triggers of their muskets one after another. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. Dozens of black lead bullets were fired at Aries rapidly. Aries also reacted immediately. His arm instantly completed his unique armed color domineering, suddenly turned crimson, and wisps of white heat rose up, looking extremely scary. He stretched out his arm and waved it in front of his face, and the bullet clattered to the ground. What kind of monster is this? Dorag stared at Aries, who was more than 10 meters away, with wide eyes. The arm suddenly changed into such a weird state. He was so surprised and shocked that even musket bullets fired at it were useless. The surrounding Marines were also shocked. Aries, who had blocked all the bullets, also moved, jumped directly into the air, and punched the sleeping Garp hard. Garp, who had no reaction, was thrown away by a punch and crashed into the cabin room with a bang. All this made Aries very puzzled and confused. Lieutenant General Garp. Lieutenant General Garp. The soldiers on the ship looked at the pirate who knocked Marine Lieutenant General Garp away with dumbfounded eyes. Hateful. Go to hell, pirate. With passion and justice in his arms, Dorag punched Aries in the thigh. Bang. A dull sound came, and Dorag felt as if he had been punched on steel. His hand hurt so much. A thought arose in my mind, is this guy human? Right now. Aries' leg suddenly turned red and hot, and Dorag instantly felt a burning pain, and subconsciously retracted his arm. So hot. Is this a devil fruit ability? Before he could react, a foot that was as red and hot as a branding iron kicked him in the face with a bang. A burning sound sounded. Dorag suddenly felt a strong stimulating pain sweeping through his nerves, and then his mind went blank and he lost consciousness. And his body instantly flew out like a meteor. Garp, who just walked out of the cabin, flew past and smashed many wooden walls with a roar. Garp pressed his nostrils and asked with a confused look on his face, "What happened?" Looking at the deck, He always felt that something was missing, and then suddenly realized and asked, "Where is Dorag? Did that kid get scared away?" Garp asked. The numerous Marines on the deck instantly felt as if they had eaten shit, and their expressions were terrifyingly dark. God knows how tired the Marines who followed Marine Lieutenant General Garp were, having to deal with such a Marine general. The Marines on the deck obviously haven't really started fighting yet. He was already starting to feel exhausted mentally and physically. A Marine school-level general said, "Lieutenant General Garp, the one who was kicked just now, the one who was knocked away was your son." Drag. Clam. Nani. Garp was so shocked that his eyes popped out of his sockets, and he yelled in panic, "That's Dorag." He immediately turned around hurriedly and rushed into the broken wall. Noises were also heard in the room. After a while, he lifted the unconscious Dorag out with one hand. I saw blood hanging from the corner of Dorag's mouth, and a red mark on the left side of his face, but this mark was slowly disappearing, and it seemed that it would disappear soon. This mark didn't really stay on his face like this, maybe because Aries' power and domineering power weren't strong enough. Garp casually threw Drago to the side of Marine, looked at Aries angrily, and asked, "What's your kid's name?" "My name is Aries." As soon as Aries' voice came out, he saw the Marine in front of him suddenly disappear, making his eyes widen suddenly. So fast. When he saw Garp in his sight again, he was already flying above Aries' head. "Pirate brat, try the power of my iron fist." Garp's roar sounded like a bell. Even that huge fist became pitch black. It's the color hardening of the weapon. It was so fast that Aries couldn't react, and the powerful and heavy black iron fist slammed into his head. Dwang. Aries felt a strong pain attack his brain, and he felt dizzy for a moment, feeling as if the world was turning upside down. Heaven and earth change position. The direction is tilted. His mind went blank, and his confused consciousness and severe pain made it impossible for him to control his body. He could only feel a feeling of flying up rapidly. Finally, it was covered and wrapped by the cold sea water. Gurgling. A large number of bubbles rise from the sea water and float to the surface. Memories emerged from the depths of Aries' mind, where there were other friends, slides, and various toys. It seems to be a place called kindergarten. There was an orange singing car that picked him up and dropped him off. Li Yong. Kindergarten. Who is Li Yong? Gulu. When Aries, whose brain was concussed and in severe pain, read the name, he suddenly choked on the seawater poured into his mouth and woke up. The tearing pain in his mind made it impossible for him to calm down and feel the large amount of memories emerging in his mind. He kept his mouth shut, shook his head, and immediately swam towards the sea without paying attention to the scene in his mind. On the deck of a marine warship, when many Marines saw the pirate Aries being punched by Garp and sinking into the sea, they immediately cheered and their morale was boosted. It was Lieutenant General Garp who took action. What a terrifying power! He defeated the pirate with one punch. Lieutenant General Garp is one of the strongest combatants in Marine. How can such an unknown pirate be the opponent of Lieutenant General Garp? That punch was so handsome and powerful. Lieutenant General Garp's fist was enough to scare the pirates. Quote. The atmosphere suddenly changed from the solemn fear before to the warm excitement now. At this time, under the call and treatment of the ship's doctor on the warship, Dorag slowly woke up and regained consciousness. He felt the burning, severe pain on his left cheek, and suddenly he remembered when Aries kicked him in the face. Dorag suddenly became furious. Dorag, control your emotions and don't be angry. The marks on your face are congested with anger and are now turning red again. The ship's doctor who was supporting Dorag immediately reminded him in his ear. Marks on face. Dorag was suddenly shocked when he heard this. He immediately reached out to touch his left cheek, and indeed found some dents and signs of heat. His face instantly became extremely ugly. That's a shoe sole mark. The doctor's voice came again. Dorag, you have to stay calm and slow down your blood flow. It will take at least 2 or 3 days for this mark to disappear. You must not get angry during these 3 days, otherwise the mark on your face will never disappear. Frightened, Dorag immediately took a deep breath to adjust his emotions and suppress the strong anger in his heart. The doctor also said immediately, the pirate has been punched in the head by Lieutenant General Garp and was thrown into the sea. If no one saves him, he will only be eaten by the fish in the sea. After hearing this, Dorag felt much better and breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Lieutenant General Garp also grinned proudly, haha. After receiving this iron fist from me, that guy was unconscious for at least several days. But his head is really hard. No matter how tough the pirate named Aries is, he will be knocked unconscious and lose the ability to fight if he punches him. At this point, he is still very confident in his iron fist. He looked up at the pirate ship where Wald and Akoku were fighting, his eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, "It was just a warm-up, now it's time to have a big battle to exercise your muscles." Only the famous Berndi Wald and the leaders of the Rocks Pirates are the pirates he truly values. Lieutenant General Garp turned to Marine on the deck and said, "Bring the ship closer." Before he finished speaking, his expression suddenly changed drastically, his eyes bulged out with disbelief, and he looked comically shocked. "Nani, this kid is okay." In his sight, Aries climbed up from the sea onto the deck of the Marine warship. All the Marines on the deck also turned to look at Aries. Everyone was dumbfounded and shocked. He has such tenacious vitality. Dorag's face turned pale, and the burning pain that could not be ignored appeared on his face again, causing him to hurriedly control his emotions. The red marks on his face gradually began to fade. I was shocked in my heart. The fist I received was the iron fist of love, but the fist received by the enemy was completely different. Not everyone can easily follow the punches of his father, Iron Fist, Garp, let alone being hit in the head. He was actually able to appear on the Marine deck alive and well. A unique physique, tenacious vitality, definitely no ordinary pirate. After boarding the ship, Aries immediately locked his sights on the man known as Lieutenant General Garp by other Marines. The punch just left a deep memory in his mind. He clearly felt the overwhelming power of this punch. Aries's amber-like eyes stared at Garp, their eyes bursting with astonishing light, and burning fighting spirit appeared in his eyes, burning brightly. He said excitedly, "You must be the strongest person on this warship. Come and fight me." This guy. Delog couldn't help but frown, secretly surprised in his heart, this guy has such a strong and high-spirited desire to fight. Even if Roger met his father, he would not want to fight him like this. This guy was obviously punched away by his father, which should be enough for that guy to understand the strength gap between him and his dad. Now, instead of feeling fear, the guy named Aries has an even stronger desire to fight. What a weirdo. Looking at Aries, Garp also put away the shocked expression on his face, his eyes lit up, and he praised with a smile, "This kid is perfect for being a Marine." It perfectly matched the direction he wanted to cultivate his son Dorag. Pity. It's a pirate. Aries also launched an attack. With a flick of his arm, the seawater on his body shot out, although it was not to the point where the water droplets became stronger than bullets like the murlocs. But it has already reached the intensity that is enough to seriously injure an ordinary person. If you are hit by this water droplet, it will definitely feel like being punched hard by someone. Aries, who threw out the water droplets, also moved his legs and rushed forward. Following the flying water droplets, he raised his extremely thick arms and launched an attack. Hundreds of water droplets flew towards Garp, and Garp's figure instantly made slight dodge movements, sometimes turning to the left and sometimes to the right, dodging the dense water droplets with great ease. And at this time, Aries has also arrived at Garp's body, and his fist, which is as big as his head, hits Garp's head with a strong force of wind. The power of this punch. Enough to crush a big truck. The menacing punch made Garp's eyes flash with excitement, and then he hit him with a punch. No surprises. Aries was knocked out again, hit the side of the ship with a bang, and almost fell into the sea again. Fortunately, he grabbed the unbroken side of the ship with one hand and kept himself from falling. What a powerful force. My body is obviously much stronger than his, but there is still a big gap in strength. Is it because of the domineering aura? His body is at least as wide as 2 Garps and more than a meter tall. However, in the battle of strength, the decision is made. Let him feel that there is a huge difference in strength. No, not only the armament color domineering, but also the strength and skills are very different. Aries's eyes narrowed, and his arm completed the special armament color hardening again. His arms were as red hot iron. The white heat lingers on Aries's body, as if he has turned into a red and bloody demon, which is heart-stopping. That's it. Dorag yelled. he was kicked in the face by Aries in such a weird state. This was something he couldn't forget no matter what. Garp also had a look of surprise on his face, and he became confused at the same time. This guy shouldn't be an Esper, otherwise he wouldn't be able to come from the sea. His face was full of confusion. What a strange guy. People with devil fruit abilities are naturally restrained by seawater. They will lose their power and be unable to move in seawater. There is absolutely no way this kid is a devil fruit person. But he didn't know how to explain the strange phenomenon on Aries in front of him. I was secretly surprised. Aries also bravely launched an attack on Marine Lieutenant General Garp. Under the special armed color domineering, his power was greatly strengthened. The extremely terrifying, strange power, in itself has been increased by at least 2 times. The fist made a sound of breaking through the air. The fierce and violent fist made Garp pay more attention. The fist completed the hardening of the weapon color in an instant and punched forward. Bang! The impact of the fist produced a dull loud noise. The violent airflow dispersed, setting off a violent wind that swept in all directions. Aries's huge body fell backwards, and the huge soles of his feet crushed the hard wooden deck under his feet. He took several steps back. But he was not knocked away by Garp like before. Come again! Aries shouted excitedly and rushed forward again. Like a crazy bull, it launched a collision. The huge and thick feet stepped on the deck, making a sound like a war drum, which shocked people's hearts. Bears, iron hammer. The hands were put together like a huge hammer, with one red and one bronze arm like a huge brown bear raising its arms high and hitting Garp on the head. The wind is roaring. The mighty sound conveyed the terrifying brute force of this attack. Garp dodged sideways, and Aries' hand slammed down, making him feel the extremely terrifying and arrogant power. He was secretly surprised. This kid is stronger than the giants. He also became very interested in Aries. Bang! The deck suddenly shattered into a large crater, sawdust flying everywhere, and Garp kicked Aries in the waist and abdomen. The rock-hard muscles are visible to the naked eye like squeezed rubber balls. Knocked Aries away. Other side. On the pirate ship under rocks, Akoku, who fought against Wald, also had pitted marks on his extremely powerful golden armor. The ship was in a messy and dilapidated state, even the mast was destroyed. A pirate shouted at Akoku, "Captain Akoku, Aries." Aries rushed onto Marine Vice Admiral Garp's warship alone. Akoku's expression suddenly changed. There was a huge wave in my heart. What the hell? Didn't that kid go to Wald's boat? Why did you end up on Garp's ship again? His heart was beating violently in an instant, and he almost felt like vomiting blood. That boy Aries, isn't there enough trouble and enemies? He was almost unable to stop him, but that guy even rushed onto Marine Lieutenant General Garp's warship all by himself. Really, it made him feel so tight that he almost choked to death. Akoku's distraction and carelessness allowed Wald to seize the opportunity in an instant and punch the golden armor on Akoku's chest. Bang! Not only did it create a dented fist mark on the armor, but it also caused Akoku to spurt out a mouthful of blood and fly backwards. Waluoluo. After succeeding, Wald laughed wildly and wildly. Akoku, the cadre of the Rocks Pirates, is not enough to stop me, Wald. If Rocks comes, I will let him know that no one can stop me, Wald. In the world of pirates, there has never been any clear division of combat power levels, which has caused countless people to misunderstand. It's an illusion that makes many people think that they are the strongest. Even the most famous pirates cannot completely eliminate this blind confidence and illusion. Wald, who defeated Akoku, was naturally extremely proud and happy. At this time, the calm Binjak on his shoulder said in Wald's ear, "Wald, we have to get out of here quickly. Marine will be here soon, that's Lieutenant General Marine Garp. It's going to be very troublesome." When he was so proud, Wald, who was suddenly poured a basin of cold water on him, immediately shouted in displeasure, "What about Marine Lieutenant General Garp? I am the destroyer of worlds, Wald." Wald. Ahem. Walder's eldest brother Bingjak couldn't help but look impatient, and he coughed violently as he emphasized his tone. Holding back the pain of coughing, he grabbed Wald's collar and said excitedly, "Go back to the ship and take a look." The man named Aries was probably the one who swam towards our ship in the sea before. Guy. Maybe something happened on the ship now. Big Brother Bingjack's reminder made Berndi Wald's face darken, and with a bit of heaviness, she compromised, then go back to the ship first and take a look. Then he jumped into the air. His feet thumped in the air, causing ripples and circles. The whole person flew towards his ship like a flying cannonball. After a while, Berndi Wald landed on the deck with Binjak. When he saw the damaged decks, ship sides and injured officers, he couldn't help but frown and said with an angry look on his face, "Did that guy do all of this?" When Binjak on his shoulder saw Sebastian and Garp lying unconscious on the deck and receiving treatment, the pupils in his eyes shrank sharply. Shocked inside, "Sebastian, Garp," Binjak shouted with great concern and asked, "Nakan, how are they?" The two people's completely different personalities lead to completely different concerns about the same thing. One appears to be extremely irritable and full of anger, while the other is concerned about the safety of his companions. Nakan stood up, looked at the two of them and immediately responded, "They are fine for the time being. I have applied medicine to their wounds. They will be fine after a few days of rest. Captain, do you know the name of that monster?" Thinking of Aries's fierce and powerful performance, her tone began to tremble uncontrollably. Not only was there no bounty for Marine, but she had never heard of such a number one figure in the Rocks Pirates before, which really surprised her. With such combat power, he is almost worthy of being a great pirate with a bounty of over 100 million. Even Captain Berndi Wald's bounty is only 200 million belly. This is not yet the era of great pirates in the future. Pirates have not yet shown a blowout era. The bounty for powerful pirates is only a few 100 million belly. Snort. Berndi Wald had a dissatisfied look on his face, and his sharp and fierce eyes swept over all of his men, causing all the pirates to have cold sweat on their faces and backs, and their faces turned pale with fear. He cursed loudly, "What a waste. You guys can't even deal with an unknown little guy from the Rocks Pirates. That reckless guy looks like a newcomer at first glance. You were defeated by a newcomer. It's really useless." The other party was a pirate with little reputation and no bounty, so he wounded his own cadres. Where can the Wald Pirates save their reputation? The furious Wald's loud curses made all the members of the Wald Pirates dare not even speak out. Kadri Nakan did not refute, because this was an undeniable fact. That guy was really too strong. His terrifying strength and ability to withstand blows made her feel a strong fear in her heart. Only Binjak comforted him and said, "Wald, you can't blame them. They tried their best. That guy named Aries should be very strong. Maybe he is the main member of the Rocks Pirates, but his reputation has been overshadowed by others." Then he suggested to Wald, "Wald, let's leave here first." The one named Aries. Leave. Before Binjak finished speaking, he was interrupted by Wald. There was a hint of evil in his eyes, and he unleashed his fierce and domineering will. "Whether it is a marine or a pirate, stand in front of me, Wald. Quote. Everything will be destroyed." With that said, he reached out and put the panic-looking Walder down from his shoulders. And Wald also shouted to stop. "Wald. Ahem, ahem." After shouting in excitement, he started coughing again. Berndi Wald didn't care about all that, and told Nakan, "Nakan, take care of Binjak." Then he jumped into the air, stepping on the moonwalk and flying towards the marine warship. Wald. Binjak could only look at the leaving Wald helplessly. He had been suffering from illness since childhood, and even after seeing various famous doctors, it was of no avail. Not only has his body not grown at all over the years, but he looks old, weak, sick and disabled, and he is always coughing. The younger brother who was about the same height as him back then has grown into a burly man and has gradually grown into a famous pirate. Binjak felt a little heartbroken and could not help but burst into tears as he murmured, Our dream is travel around the world, seeking true freedom." With no fighting ability, he only hoped that his brother Berndi Wald would be safe. Time goes back a few minutes. Akoku stretched out his hand to pull away the broken piece of wood that was pressed against him. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth and stained his long black beard. He covered his chest with one hand and stood up slowly. "My chest felt like it was hit hard by a heavy object. If it weren't for this hard armor, I'm afraid the injury would be even more serious." "Is this the strength of World Destroyer Berndi Wald? I'm afraid it's almost the same as Whitebeard and Golden Lion." He walked out onto the deck through a gaping hole in the cabin wall. Seeing Berndi Wald withdraw, The heavy pressure on his heart was relieved a lot, but when he thought of Aries, Akoku's heart suddenly filled up. He cursed secretly in his heart. Akoku looked up at the marine warship and immediately commanded, "Send the ship over, rescue Aries and retreat immediately." A really helpless decision was made. At this moment, he wanted to leave Aries behind, but I sighed deeply in my heart. What a sin. Can't that guy Aries just stay on the ship peacefully and honestly? No, he is honestly staying on someone else's boat. Akoku felt like there was a tight breath in his chest. It was very stuffy and irritating, and he couldn't vent it. It was extremely uncomfortable. On board the marine warship, there was a loud sound. Dorag saw the scene of Aries being shot away. He was a little shocked and numb. With a dull expression, he murmured to himself, "This is already the 35th time. 4 of them fell into the sea and were hit. I retreated 24 times and was knocked away 7 times." He was deeply shocked by his tenacious vitality and strong fighting spirit. If he had been punched as hard as his father, he would have been lying in the emergency room long ago. And Aries still didn't fall. Delog also discovered something strange. It seemed that the pirate named Aries in front of him became more and more fierce as he fought. He knew it wasn't an illusion. The other party is such a weird person. Garp also had a look of excitement on his face. When Aries was knocked away, he picked his nose with his little finger. He turned to scold Dorag. "Dorag, look at me, then look at you, is it true? Don't you have any ideas? How great it would be if this guy were my son." Suddenly, Dorag's face darkened. "I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.